This is Adam Graham from Pretty Much the Present, bringing you a week of old-time radio podcasts. These episodes were originally released back in 2011, and we're releasing them here pretty much as is, with only some extraneous bits such as the opening from all of the episodes after the first episode removed. Because these are old, it should be noted that any offers or promotions mentioned in the episode may not be valid unless they're currently mentioned on the Great Detectives website. Here now is a week of old-time radio detective podcast. Welcome to the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio. From Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham. If you have a comment, email it to me, box13@greatdetectives.net. Become one of our friends on Facebook, facebook.com/radiodetectives. And the nominations are once again open for the Podcast Awards through September 30th. Go to podcastawards.com. We'd appreciate your nomination in the Culture Arts category, along with any other favorite podcast you enjoy in the other categories. They'll definitely appreciate that. Well, this episode is brought to you by the financial support of our listeners. Thank you so much. Here now is today's episode of Barrie Craig Confidential Investigator, Diary of Death.
William Gargan stars as Barrie Craig, Confidential Investigator.
There's an old-school motto with a modern twist, folks. An empty barrel makes a fine casket.
The National Broadcasting Company presents William Gargan in another transcribed drama of mystery and adventure with America's #1 detective, Barrie Craig, Confidential Investigator.
Barrie Craig speaking. Manhattan Island's my beat. From Battery Place uptown to Spite and Divo. I've got my footprints on every inch of sidewalk, a memory in every mile. Get used to a beat and it's like home to you. You're an island native, and only a pretty fancy fee can drag you even across the river to Brooklyn or 3 other boroughs. To drag you out of town needs a major earthquake or an act of Congress. So how come I find myself 40 miles from Broadway in an incorporated village called Seneca on the trail of a claw murderer? A nice little gent with side whiskers like Abraham Lincoln coaxed me into it. Town Supervisor Samuels, he called himself. His pitch went something like this.
I came straight to you from Lieutenant Trav Rogers of your Metropolitan Police, Mr. Craig.
Yeah, Lieutenant Rogers phoned me you just left his office. No dice, old man. Seneca's off my beat.
But it's a situation of desperate emergency.
What's the population of your village, Samuel?
300.
A killer can't lose himself in that small a crowd.
But...
Order every townsman to line up in the public square. Then go up and down the line. When you see a wild gleam, nab him.
A wild gleam?
The guy you're looking for is a lunatic, first class. The claw used in the killing shows that. One nut in a neighborly crowd, your sheriff can't be that helpless.
He is. Berkey's only honorary sheriff. His business is farm tools and tractors.
Who's your regular sheriff?
We have nobody. Crime in Seneca's a rare thing. Don't even have a jail.
Pass the hat and build yourself one. Crime's here to stay, people say.
The board of supervisors empowered me to supersede Berkey, to contract outside help. Someone experienced in homicide. You were highly recommended.
By Trav Rogers. The lieutenant's having his joke.
Please, Mr. Craig.
You're a nice town supervisor, and you look like a tintype of an old favorite uncle of mine. I'd like to help you, but no amount of pleading. No power on earth, not 50 claw killings, can entice me 40 miles from New York. In Seneca, flanked by Samuels and the sometime sheriff, I got a look at the corpse. The morgue was the back room of a taxpayer divided into a grain, oats, and seed shop and mortuary parlor.
This was Dr. Tyler, Mr. Craig.
A doctor, huh?
Horse doctor.
Oh, sad day for Dobbin. Pretty thorough job of annihilation.
Shocking crime.
The claw marks on the skull were made by a garden tool, looks like.
Yeah.
Did Doc Tyler have any enemies? Or let the sheriff answer, Samuels.
Why, no. Not to my knowledge, he didn't. Doc Tyler was a pillar in the community, a fine, respected man.
Save the eulogy for the funeral services, huh? Theft, then. Was anything stolen?
No, I'll have to say no to that. All Tyler had was accounts receivable. Bills owing him for his doctoring work.
You went over his property, then?
I did. The robbery was my notion, too, at first. I ordered an inventory of everything Tyler owned, right down to the horse pails.
And nothing was missing?
Nothing of any account, no. Except for old Baldy, everything was right where it belonged.
Except for old Baldy, you say?
Huh? Oh, yeah. Old Baldy's an old iron paperweight, the American Eagle. Doc Tyler always had it on his desk on top of a pile of papers.
And old Baldy was missing?
Yes, we couldn't find hide nor hair of it. Well, either somebody borrowed it and planned to keep it now that Tyler is gone, or Tyler threw it out.
Or the murderer clawed Tyler to get it.
Oh, now, why would anybody want to commit murder for a worthless old paperweight?
Can't say, but that's why I'm in this whistle stop, to find out why.
And that brings us down to cases. You and me.
Come again?
Your being here. Samuels brought you out against me.
Against you?
No, Sheriff.
Shut up, Samuels. This is between me and Craig. Against me, I said, Craig.
Oh, I get it. Your pride's hurt, huh, Sheriff?
When you've jackassed around a while and Samuels admits to being the finicky fool he is, I'm marching you to the railroad station.
With a brass band and local school mom doubling as drum majorette. A big goodbye to a conquering hero, Sheriff, because my parting gift to Seneca is your claw murderer in person. Want to bet? I found overnight accommodations at a Miss Pringle's split seconds before a storm broke. Miss Pringle was a spinster who looked it, and a fluffy white poodle who looked as if he was eating himself into his grave to escape Miss Pringle.
This is Fluff, Mr. Craig.
Fluff, huh? Does he bark?
Seldom. Fluff has chronic laryngitis.
Oh.
Dr. Tyler, peace to him, was treating Fluff.
Sad about Dr. Tyler.
You're here to find the fiend?
I'm here to get a night's sleep.
Very well. You can have the attic room.
Why so high a climb?
But I'm not accustomed to taking male lodgers.
An upset. Blankets, towels, is everything there?
Oh, yes, the room is ready.
And a wall outlet so I can plug in and shave?
No, the electric wires don't extend to the attic.
Oh.
There's a kerosene lamp. Now, if you'll go to your room...
You're pushing me, Miss Pringle.
But I'm not accustomed to men in my parlor.
Enough said. I'll see you in my dreams.
Oh.
Good night, Miss Pringle. There were things I wasn't accustomed to, like attics, like figuring out how to light kerosene lamps, or like having the roof suddenly cave in on my head. I went down from a sneak blow. A club, the weapon felt like. I went down, but not out. I could see through a red haze like a film of blood, and I could hear glass breaking somewhere in the room. I rolled on the floor, not to be a sitting duck for a second blow. But no second blow came. Just quiet and the rain outside. The rain blowing in from an open window. The window my sneak opponent had used getting in and out. I went out the window after him. Outside, just at the edge of Miss Pringle's driveway, I ran into a reasonable facsimile of King Kong. A guy who looked as if he should be swinging from trees. sitting behind the wheel of an open convertible, its top down, working the car starter and getting nowhere. Having trouble, friend?
It's slow. Don't want to go.
The wires are wet.
I'm driving good, and then it stops.
Your wires are wet.
I'm driving good, and then it stops, and then it won't go.
You're getting all tangled up in your IQ, friend. Doesn't the top go up?
Yeah, easy. This button here, you push it.
So push it.
No.
You've got a medium-sized lake around you. Floodwaters rising from the floorboard.
I'm not pushing no button. I like it like this.
How did you happen to stall here?
I told you I'm driving good.
Then it stops and then it won't go.
You making fun of me?
No. Did we meet a while ago?
Huh? Where?
In Miss Pringle's attic.
No. I'm driving, so how could it be?
How could it be? Parked here the last 5 minutes. Did you see anybody in a hurry to quit the general neighborhood of Miss Pringle's?
No. I seen nobody.
You're sure?
Are you trying to mix me up?
Nature got to you first. Just for future reference, what name do you answer to?
Harmony.
Harmony?
Yeah. You like it?
Back in the attic with the kerosene lamp lit and Miss Pringle in a trembling spasm, I took stock of the room.
Oh, what you've told me, Mr. Craig, it's unbelievable.
Believe it. I wasn't born with this rhinoceros egg on my head.
But what purpose
I'm
could you
checking to see. This picture on the floor, where was it hanging originally? The kerosene lamp's throwing so many shadows I can't see the nail hole.
Why, it hung there over the highboy. The glass broke?
Yeah, it needs a new glass. A ship's print, huh?
Yes, the Princess Ida, an old whaling vessel.
The picture have any special meaning?
Special meaning?
A value, an heirloom or something?
Why, no value. I only paid $1 for... Oh, wait. Yes, come to think of it, I was offered a good price for it.
How good a price?
$100, if I recollect.
For a dollar print? Who made the offer?
The young Mr. Stanley, the one with the new antique shop out on North Rugby.
Why didn't you sell the picture to him?
Well, I'm not sure. For spite, I guess.
Spite?
Well, the young man was too persistent and bad-mannered. Calling me on the telephone and then tracking his muddy boots on my parlor rugs. But I don't understand why these questions.
Somebody was up here to steal the picture. I got in the way and was struck down.
But nobody stole the Princess Ida.
It was dropped in the commotion and the getaway. I heard breaking glass while rolling on the floor.
Oh, you're trying to frighten me.
Just enough to make you twice the cautious miss you already are. No men in your parlor. There's one joker abroad who might not respect that rule.
Oh, you're not alluding to the claw murderer?
Bolt your door and sleep with one eye open.
Oh, my...
I've just found you, beautiful, and I don't want to lose you.
Mr. Craig.
Yes, Miss Pringle?
There's a fine room on the first floor right next to mine.
Oh, no thanks. I'm getting to like the attic.
There's electricity and a wall outlet you can shave.
Oh, really kind of you. But I'm looking forward to roughing it. It'll toughen me up.
Mr. Craig, I insist you move to the room downstairs next to mine.
Oh, this creeping infatuation for me. Fight it, Miss Pringle, to your last drop of blood. We could get to be the talk of Seneca.
But I don't care, Mr. Craig. I'm frightened.
In the morning, I took breakfast with Town Supervisor Samuel. Breakfast and information.
I'm sorry Sheriff Berkey made you unwelcome.
Berkey's sensitive to competition.
I'm sorry about your injury.
My injury?
You were attacked and beaten last night.
How could you know?
Miss Pringle had me on the telephone in the middle of the night.
Oh. I want to know about a couple of your townspeople. First, a bright chap who calls himself Harmony.
Harmony? Now, what reason could you...
Never mind. I'm asking the questions. Tell me about him.
Harmony's Big Toby Keller. Hires out for odd jobs. Spring plowing, window washing, garage work.
How about dirty work?
No. Craig, you're wrong about Harmony. I'd take an oath. His mind isn't the best, but we know him to be good-natured, honest.
Mm-hmm. What about a young Mr. Stanley?
Fred Stanley? He's a newcomer to Seneca.
What brought him here?
A lawyer got him to come in the first place. From Chicago, I think. Yeah, Chicago. Fred Stanley came thinking he was a missing heir. Claim his grandfather's fortune.
But there was no fortune.
Only an old house just this side of the Seneca line, not worth the taxes on it.
Why was there any idea of a fortune at all?
And the grandfather, old Mitchell Stanley, was said to be a rich miser who put no trust in banks. When Mitch Stanley died, there wasn't a penny. They had to auction off his furniture to pay for his funeral.
But young Stanley stayed on in Seneca.
Yeah, opened an antique shop at the old Stanley house.
Can he make out in a one-horse town like this?
He has business signs posted on the highways, hoping to get the tourist trade. What's your interest in Fred Stanley?
He tried to buy a ship's print, the Princess Ida, from a girlfriend of mine, Miss Pringle. Stanley offered $100 for a picture worth $1. A liberal offer like that is...
Craig!
No, don't blow your gasket. It's only a parcel delivery through your closed window. Did you order this?
What is it?
A claw. A garden tool like the one used on Doc Tyler. And a note with it. It's addressed to me, Barrie Craig. Get out of Seneca by 10 this morning or never.
Get out of Seneca by 10?
9. I've got an hour of grace.
Or never. Craig, it's a threat against your life.
I'll be planted in the country. A city fellow like me.
The handwriting.
No handwriting. The note was put together with newsprint. Can I borrow your car?
Yeah, of course.
Stanley's antique shop is on North Rugby Road, just this side of the Seneca line, you said.
It's a 3-mile drive, up the incline to Widow's Ridge, then left a quarter mile. Craig, be careful. Please, I don't want your murder on my conscience.
Okay, I'll stay alive, but only for your sake, mind you. Staying alive is a deal that sometimes needs the cooperation of unknown parties, in my racket anyhow. Climbing the steep incline to Widow's Ridge. Climbing maybe 300 feet into morning mists as thick as pea soup. I knew I wasn't going to get that kind of cooperation. A rifle shot that blew a tire into confetti. Crash off the incline had to come. Funny distortions in your eye when you first come to and start taking inventory to see if you're alive. A half-frozen robin who didn't have the sense to fly south for the winter. He sat on the side of the hill 10 feet from where I lay, staring solemnly at me and chirping prayers for my safety. Oh, when I started getting to my feet, the robin flew away. The inventory added up. I was all there in one piece, with a few dents that couldn't hurt forever. Samuel's car was down at the foot of the incline, topsy-turvy, like it was playing dead dog. I'd been thrown clear of the wreck. Half my fee into the poor box. I took an oath on that as I started for Rugby Road on foot. Fred Stanley gave me the expected answer.
Just what do you find so unusual about my interest in buying old pictures, Mr. Craig?
$100 for a $1 picture doesn't make sense.
And why must it make sense?
It's a cold, practical world, chum. People generally don't go haywire with money. They conserve it.
Now, look, Craig, I collect Americana. Whatever strikes my fancy, I buy. The cost is secondary.
But you're in business to buy cheap and sell at a profit.
Technically, yes, but it doesn't work out that way. I love buying and I hate selling. A profit is rare.
That gets expensive. Where does the money come from?
That's none of your business, Craig. Now, if you don't mind, I'll terminate this interview.
I'm in no hurry.
Now, look here, Craig.
And I'm in no mood for the polite, formal approach, Stanley. Or the kind of weasel talk you've been giving me. Or being terminated.
Are you insane?
I walked away from my own murder 20 minutes ago. I came to this whistle stop against my will to do a big, good deed. And go home. I don't intend to settle here for keeps.
But what has that got to do...
You lied to me. A fancy, eccentric pose that's as phony as a ham board of an Acton Shamokin. The ship print signifies something more than just another antique. No polite, formal approach, Stanley. I'm going to pound the truth out of him.
You're crazy. Let me go.
Tell me about the Princess Ida ship, Prince.
Let go. Harmony. Harmony, help.
Harmony, huh? Now we're making headway. So King Kong's hired out to you.
Harmony, help.
I want you to let Stanley go.
Strapping ape like you, Harmony, you don't need a gun to take charge.
I want you to let Stanley go.
Sure, I'll let Stanley go. I was only fixing his tie.
Oh, Craig, you had no right to manhandle me. No right.
It paid off. I got to find out who was providing Harmony with his raw meat.
Harmony's with me on day hire to do general cleaning and polishing, scrape down old furniture.
Plus prowl in attics, plus distribute garden tools shaped like claws all over town, plus take rifle shots at passing cars.
You're out of your mind. You assaulted me and Harmony rescued me. Now get out of here.
Sure. But I'll be back. I'll be back, Stanley. The minute I tumble to your motive. Back at Miss Pringle's to wash up and change my suit for a whole one, I found her prized parlor rug a mess. Spots all over it. And the dog Fluff, suddenly cured of laryngitis and barking. Warm spots with a sticky feeling to the hand. Red like blood. Blood tracked in by Fluff from somewhere. I followed the tracks to Miss Pringle's bedroom. The blood was Miss Pringle's goodbye to spinsterhood. The garden tool shaped like a claw lay beside her on the floor like a third hand. Town Supervisor Samuels, aged 20 years and 20 seconds.
Craig, it's ghastly.
We'll skip the rhetoric. Miss Pringle was murdered by someone who made off with the Princess Ida.
You know that?
The picture is gone. I searched high and low.
The murder then clears Stanley and Harmony of any suspicion.
No.
But you saw them
Miss
both.
Pringle could have been murdered earlier, while I was here, breakfasting with you. The Princess Ida and Old Baldy. 2 murders for 2 worthless relics.
You're convinced these relics motivated the atrocities?
It figures. The relics and somebody's lust to kill for its own sake. We're dealing with a nut to boot. Do the articles have any history?
History?
A story, some legend they figure in, say.
No, nothing I know, Craig.
Some background that could tell us why 2 hunks of junk produced 2 killings.
I'm sorry.
Is there anybody in Seneca who could know? A village librarian or a local historian?
You could ask Will Briggs. Will used to be our recorder until the town board voted to abolish the job.
Will Briggs?
Will's crotchety, bad-tempered. I don't think he'll be disposed to help you, even if he could.
Even in a town crisis like this?
Will Briggs don't feel very civic about Seneca and its problems. Since we abolished his job for economy reasons, Will's been feuding. Suing in the courts for pension, making a rumpus at town hall meetings.
Great cooperative little town you've got here. Great job you roped me into. But Will Briggs pulled a switch on Samuel's characterization of him. Briggs fell all over himself cooperating.
For $20, Mr. Craig. I am a man without funds.
$20, okay. You'll get it.
Black-hearted board of supervisors.
Did you dirt? Old Baldy and the Princess Ida. Scratch your memory.
Old Baldy and the Princess Ida. Funny now, you should be asking about them.
Why is it funny?
You're the second party that's come to me asking.
Who came first?
Old Mitchell Stanley's grandson. The one who settled himself into a shop here a spell ago. Young Fred Stanley.
What did you tell him?
What I'll tell you. If you wait. I have the record here. Yes, here it is. The sales sheet, my own writing, for that auction they held at Mitchell Stanley's once, to raise money for burying him. I was clerking for the auctioneer that day.
Get to it, please.
In my time. See? It says here we sold beds and tables and floor coverings. Down here it says Old Baldy. 50 cents. Sold to Dr. Tyler. Princess Ida. $1. Sold to Miss Pringle. And the snowman sold for 75 cents.
What's the snowman?
The design on a patchwork quilt it's named for.
Who bought it?
Let me see. Sold to Adam Samuels, it says. That's the town supervisor himself.
Where's your telephone, Briggs?
Telephone?
He ain't never invented it from its use to me. Keeping body and soul together as it is.
Briggs, don't bend my ears.
What's got your back up?
Samuels, your town supervisor's number 3 on the Claw murderers list.
If it's so, I say good riddance to the black-hearted.
Good riddance of bad. Someone else would have to judge Samuel's merits as a human on Earth. The garden tool, shaped as a claw, lay across the room where it had been thrown. A claw with bright red fingers. Fred Stanley resisted arrest to the last gasp. Harmony's last gasp, that is.
Craig, get out of here.
You're under arrest, Stanley.
You have no authority.
I've got a gun.
Harmony!
That 8th man comes through the door and he's dead.
Harmony!
You're asking your moronic stooge to commit suicide?
We'll see. Harmony!
One down, and Seneca's a better place for it.
You killed him.
He's only wounded. Where do you want it, Stanley?
I'll go with you.
Stanley put his confession on record after a little workout and a lot of sweating.
I found a diary that once belonged to my grandfather, Mitchell Stanley. A diary hidden behind the oak paneling over a fireplace. In the diary, 3 pieces of a map were mentioned.
A piece each hidden in Old Baldy, the Princess Ida, and the Snowman, huh?
Yes. A treasure map. The 3 pieces were to fit together into a treasure map. Through them, I'd find the wealth my grandfather was reputed to have. The wealth that never turned up when he died.
Insanity runs in the Stanley line, huh?
My grandfather's whole genius was a genius for hiding and hoarding. Hiding from the world in that awful house at the edge of the town line. Hoarding his gold. Fantastic thing like a child's treasure map was well in character with my grandfather. The shabby trick, too, was well in character with my grandfather.
What does that mean?
Well, it was all a grotesque joke. My grandfather's ghoulish sense of humor. I killed 3 people for a load of junk. There weren't any pieces of map in Old Baldy. Or the Princess Ida, or the Snowman.
That diary, Stanley. Give it to me.
Here, go hunt yourself up some treasure, Craig.
There was an anticlimax to the Stanley story. In a village beanery, with the sometime Sheriff Berkey trying to act apologetic and yet keep his dignity.
I suppose you'll be leaving now, Craig, eh?
Yeah, I can't wait to stand on Broadway and flip a cigarette into the gutter.
Well, I've been a jealous fool.
So would I be, in your shoes.
Oh, thanks. Will Briggs is coming over to see you. He says you owe him something.
Yeah. $20 for valuable services rendered.
Craig?
Briggs.
It's not out of order now.
You done me for $20? Here you are.
I'll thank you and be going.
Stick around a minute, Briggs. I want to go over that feud you had with the town board.
I'm over it now.
Now, with the town board extinct, now that the murders of Doc Tyler, Miss Pringle, and Samuels have left Seneca without a town board.
I'm not one to pillory the dead.
But I'm one to pillory the living. Here's that alleged Mitchell Stanley diary that produced 3 murders.
Is it now?
And this is that auction sales sheet in your own handwriting, as you told me. Do I have to tell you that the handwriting in both is the same, even down to the green ink?
Craig, what are you getting at with Briggs?
That Briggs here forged the diary, Sheriff, and planted it where young Stanley would be sure to find it. That Stanley killed 3 people Briggs hated, while Briggs sat back and enjoyed the show. That young Stanley was only a dupe, a tool used for revenge. Make the arrest, Sheriff. And then flag down a train so I can scram out of this whistle stop. The sweet neighborliness around here is just killing me. Good night, folks. See you next week.
You have been listening to William Gargan in another exciting transcribed mystery drama from the adventures of Barrie Craig, confidential investigator. Tonight's story, Diary of Death, was written by John Robert. Next week, it's the strange story titled A Time to Kill, about which Barrie Craig has this to say.
Next week, I have a wow of a time in the kindergarten when a whimsical corpse insists on playing hide and go seek. See you next week, folks.
Featured in the role of Samuels was Louis Van Rooten. Barrie Craig, starring William Gargan, was under the direction of Hyman Brown. This is Don Pardo speaking.
Next, Robert Montgomery presents something different than news analysis on NBC.
Welcome back. With the opening of this episode, where he was talking about Manhattan being his beat, that was actually an allusion to a show on CBS called Broadway is My Beat. At the beginning of each episode, Danny Clover would state, Broadway's my beat, from Times Square to Columbus Circle. But this episode was definitely a different turn, putting Craig in an unknown environment, and I think the results were fantastic. In his usual great writing and twists that don't stop until the very end. Now we turn to listener comments and feedback. Keeps getting better. Love every show. And that's off of Podcast Alley, and that's appreciated. Encourage everybody to cast their vote for the show on Podcast Alley. I want to remind you, since we're a little short on comments and feedback today, that we do have other old-time radio podcasts. We have the Old Time Dragnet podcast, where that's actually been going the longest since March 2007. Every week we post another episode of Dragnet every Saturday, and you can listen over at radiodragnet.com. And then we have the Old Time Radio Superman show, which updates twice a week with another chapter in the adventures of the Man in Man of Steel, available at laserandsword.com. But thank you so much for listening. I'd encourage you to nominate the great detectives of old time radio in the Podcast Awards at podcastawards.com. You can only submit one form, so if you've got podcasts that you enjoy in other categories, then certainly submit those, but would be much appreciated. Podcastawards.com in the Culture Arts category. Well, now we're going to get into today's episode. Today's episode is brought to you by the generous financial support of our listeners, so thank you very much for that. And we're going to begin with the NBC run of Rogues Gallery in the summer of 1946. The last Mutual episode aired on June 20th of 1946, called The Missing Witness, and then the program shifted over to NBC. This was quite common for a program to start on one network, switch to another, switch back. Rogues Gallery had actually begun over NBC in the summer of 1945. I should mention here that for the next about 23 weeks, Tuesdays will feature an NBC program with one exception. But here now is the Star of Savoy.
The F.W. Fitch Company presents Dick Powell as Private Investigator Richard Rogue in Rogues Gallery. Laugh a while and a song be as hard as Fitch. Shampoo. Don't despair, use your head, save your hair, use Fitch. Shampoo. The
W. Fitch Company, makers of Fitch's saponified coconut oil shampoo and Fitch's shaving creams, presents Dick Powell as Private Investigator Richard Rogue in Rogue's Gallery.
For the benefit of those who tuned in hoping to hear Cass Daly, may I introduce myself? My name is Richard Rogue. I'm a private investigator. I said it and I'm glad. Private investigator. That's the Harvard way of saying I'm a guy who has parlayed a hard head and a great curiosity about other people's affairs into a career. At least that's the way the Homicide Squad's Lieutenant Urban, who shares my interest in unalive bodies, feels about me. And I'd also better tell you now that I have a certain personal idiosyncrasy. I hold audible consultations with my alter ego once in a while when I'm confused and in need of advice. His name is Ugor, which is Rogue spelled backwards, and he's a very fresh little spook. Of course, I wouldn't have known I had an alter ego if Betty Callahan, the girl I would rather be marooned on a desert island with than not, hadn't browbeaten me into reading Sigmund Freud. Betty, who is the sharpest newspaper woman in town, extends upward about 5 feet from the floor, has hair the color of cordovan leather in firelight, and a tip-tilted Irish nose shying away from the most kissable mouth in the world. She's wonderful. And on this day I'm going to tell you about, she and I had lunch together. She had an hour to kill, so she walked back to my office with me.
You know, Richard, this is much too nice a day to work.
Look, Betty, if you can get rid of that assignment you have for this afternoon, we'll go to the races, huh?
Oh, I haven't been out this year.
I got some information from Herb Hyde at the cigar store in the lobby. He gave me 2 horses who gave him their word they were ready today.
Talking horses?
Only to Herb. They don't speak English, but fortunately he speaks horse. Now get on the phone and ask that slave driver at your city desk for the afternoon off. Tell him you have to go to your grandmother's wedding or something.
Well, I'll try, but it's not going to work, and I know it.
Just sit right down there and pay no attention to that sign asking you to leave a nickel in the cigar box for every call.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, it's nothing. It's nothing. I'll do anything for the girl I love.
Better think of something better than my grandmother's wedding. I know. I'll tell him I want to go to the races.
Okay, but...
You're Richard Rogue?
Yeah?
A detective in New York named Clement Cohan referred me to you. My name is Charles McDonald.
Yeah, I got his letter.
I got to see you right away.
Go on in that office there. I'll be in a minute.
All right. Please, hurry.
What was the matter with him? He looked sick.
Oh, probably been drinking. I noticed that from the...
Oh, wait a minute. Hello, give me the city desk, please.
Now, make it a good story. Tell him it's your grandmother.
Hello, Walter. This is Betty Callahan. Look, can you put somebody else on that Struble story this afternoon? I want to go to the races. But, Walter... Yes, but... Okay.
What did he say?
No.
Oh.
He told me to get right back to the paper, and I like my job, so here I'll go.
Well, then wait a minute. I'll go in and talk with this guy, give him the quick brush and go over with you. Maybe I can talk Walter into letting you take the afternoon off for the betterment of racing, huh?
Well, you'll have to hurry. Walter's mad.
Well, just take it easy. I'll be right back. Hey, what's the matter? Good Lord, Betty.
Richard, what happened? Oh, he fell out of his chair.
Yeah. Get Urban on the phone and call it for an ambulance.
Oh, Richard. He's dead.
Yeah, very dead.
We'll continue our story in just a moment. First, impressions often count a lot. And remember, the appearance of your hair is an important factor in impressing people favorably the first time you meet them. Fitch's Dandruff Remover Shampoo can be a real help to you in attaining the well-groomed hair that people admire. For Fitch Shampoo removes every trace of that enemy of good grooming, dandruff. It's the only shampoo made whose guarantee to remove dandruff is backed by one of the world's largest insurance firms. There's nothing magical in the way Fitch Shampoo removes dandruff. It's simply that it has a special solvent action that penetrates the thousands of tiny hair openings on the scalp, cleansing them thoroughly and dissolving every trace of dandruff. That means not only the loose flakes of dandruff, but the kind that clings to the scalp as well. Then Fitch forms an abundance of fluffy lather that carries away the dissolved dandruff flakes. It rinses out easily. It leaves the hair sparkling clean, completely free from dandruff. Try Fitch's Dandruff Remover Shampoo yourself for the appearance that impresses. Now back to Dick Powell as Private Investigator Richard Rogue in Rogue's Gallery.
I should be inured to the sight and smell of sudden death by this time, but it always does something to me. It freezes my stomach and gives me a dull ache at the base of my brain. When I left Betty Callahan on the phone in my reception room and walked into my private office, I found my mysterious visitor falling forward out of his chair in death. I knelt by his side and loosened the long topcoat he was wearing. The front of his suit and his shirt were red, and there were 2 bullet holes. One to the right of his heart, and one a little below it. I tried to blame myself for not talking to him at once, for not understanding that his staggering, shuffling gait was not caused by drinking, but by loss of blood. I looked in his billfold for identification. His name was Charles McDonald, and he was assistant manager of a Park Avenue jewelry store in New York. There was a piece of paper in his hand. I looked at it. It carried an address, 1392 Squirrel Hill. I put the paper in my pocket. Then I heard the outer office door open, and a feminine voice said,
"Is this Mr. Rogue's office?"
I jumped to my feet and ran out there, closing the door behind me. There was a girl standing by the desk talking to Betty, a dark girl. She had a figure with enough O's in it to put it in the $1 million column, and a face to match. Betty said,
This is Mr. Rogue.
Where's my husband?
"Well, I'm sure I don't know. What's his name?"
Charles McDonald. He's here. I saw him come in.
That's very interesting. Excuse me a moment. Betty, are they on their way?
Yes, both of them.
Thanks. Now, Mrs. McDonald, what makes you think your husband is here?
I saw him come in here.
You were on the elevator with him?
No. I just happened to be passing on the street. I saw Charles and spoke to him. He didn't even look at me. He walked right by. I couldn't understand it. He looked sick. I saw him come into this building. I followed him in.
Where have you been all this time?
I missed his elevator. Why are you questioning me like this? I know he's here. I want to see him.
Well, if you missed his elevator, what makes you think he's here? This is a big building, you know.
I waited for his elevator to come back to the ground floor. I talked with the operator. He remembered my husband and told me that Charles had asked for your office. Where is he, Mr. Rogue? Where is he?
Mrs. McDonald, would you just please have a chair? He's here all right, but he's busy. You'll have to wait. Oh, hello, Lieutenant Urban. Come in.
Well, Rogue, what goes on? Where's the...
Urban, I want to see you in the next office. Follow me, will you?
Well, he sure did. How did it happen, Rogie?
I'll tell you all I know. He came in here looking pretty sick. I thought he'd been drinking. That long top coat he had on covered the fact that he was bleeding to death. I told him to come in here and wait. I came in about 2 minutes later, just as he pitched forward out of his chair and died. That's when I called you, or had Betty call you. She was here when he came in, saw the whole thing.
Looks like a .38 caliber job. 2 around the heart.
His name is Charles McDonald, and he's from New York City.
Oh, that's interesting. Who's the girl outside with Callahan?
His wife.
Oh, where does she fit in here?
Well, she...
Mr. McDonald, you can't go in there.
I want to see Mr. Rogue.
Sit down.
I'm going in there.
No, Mr. McDonald, no, you can't go in there.
I know he's in there. I'm going in. Charles! Charles!
Well, when that girl saw Charles McDonald lying there, as dead as yesterday's beer, she folded up right over him like a dropped piece of string. Urban and Betty and I were still working over when the medical examiner and the technical squad from Homicide showed up. We picked her up, carried her into the outer office. As soon as she came to, Betty gave her a glass of water, which she sipped nervously when Urban started throwing questions at her like baseballs.
Mrs. McDonald, I'm sorry to have to question you at this time. Will you please put that glass down and listen to me? Now, your husband was obviously murdered. I have to have the information.
I don't know who could have done it. My husband was a businessman. He wasn't mixed up in anything that could have caused his murder.
Now, what kind of business was your husband in?
He was in the jewelry business. Manager of a big store in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Richard,
What was
I
your
have to
address
get back
in New
to the
York?
paper. I have to get the story in.
Okay, wait a minute, and I'll walk out in the hall with you.
All right, come
Where
on.
are you going, Rogie?
I'm taking Betty to a cab. I'll be back.
See that you are.
Come on.
What are you doing pulling me along like this? I have high heels on.
I'm in a hurry, baby.
But you told Lieutenant Urban you'd be right back.
I told him I'd be back, and I will. My rent's paid for another month.
Well, where are you going?
To do a little investigating. That's what it says in my card, investigator. Now, look, honey, when we get downstairs, I'm going to have to leave you. I'll see you tonight here at the office at 7 o'clock.
Going down. Hello, Mr. Rogue.
Hi, Shorty. Drop this thing, will you? I'm in a hurry. I shot out of that building like a bat out of a belfry and jumped into a cab. I slipped the cab jockey a bill that made his eyes pop open like dropped eggs and told him he could keep it if he could get me to 1392 Squirrel Hill in 5 minutes. That's the address I found in Charles McDonald's hand. We broke every law but the 18th Amendment the next 4 minutes and 50 seconds, and I jumped out of the cab, hit the front steps of that big deserted-looking old house in the dead run. The door was ajar, so I took my gun out of its shoulder holster, put it in my side coat pocket, and walked right into a blackjack. Oh! My glazed eyes told my brain there was a dead man lying there. And then my head hit one of the stars which were surrounding me, and the star exploded with a blinding flash. I felt myself flying upward at a speed that made me dizzy. I was grabbing at the tails of comets, trying to break my speed, but nothing could stop me. I looked down at the earth, and I seemed to be looking through the wrong end of a telescope. It was a little round ball, that's all. I couldn't get my breath. I fought for it. And then my lungs seemed to explode, and everything was peaceful. I opened my eyes, and I was on Cloud 8, my home away from home. Igor was sitting there, dangling his little short legs over eternity, and combing his long white beard with his stubby fingers.
Hello, Rogie. Been using your head for a blackjack back stuff again, huh?
Oh, never mind the cracks. I feel awful. Who did it?
Some big guy I never saw before.
Oh, but why would he want to hit me?
Well, you must have been interfering in his business, Chiefy. There was a dead man in that room, you know.
Yeah, I know it. What was I doing there? I'm a little foggy.
Well, you went there because it was the address that was printed on that piece of paper you found in Charles McDonald's hand. Remember?
Oh, yeah. Hey, I better get downstairs. I got work to do. Help me over the side, will you, Igor?
Oh, look, Rogie, there's no dough in this case for you. Why don't you get out of it? You want to get yourself killed for free?
I'll get out of it if I ever get back downstairs. Give me a shove, will ya? I'm going down there.
Okay, Chiefy, but take care of yourself now. So long, Rogie.
I opened one eye carefully. Then I closed it again so fast that I was afraid the guy who was watching me would hear it snap. He was a big man, and his eyes were the blue of ice cubes. Ice cubes with floodlights behind them. Hot ice. One of his hands was holding a gun, and the gun was pointed right where my heart would have been if it hadn't been in my throat.
No use playing possum now, Mr. Rogue. No, indeed. I am aware that you have returned to consciousness.
Oh, who are you?
My name is Moore. Now come, Mr. Rogue. I realize that you undoubtedly have a headache, probably a splitting headache, and I'm regretful. But we can finish our business in just a moment if you'll sit up and talk with me.
Okay, I'll try.
Excellent, excellent. Now, Mr. Rogue, where is it?
Where is what?
Now, time is of the essence. Let us not waste it. You know what I'm speaking of. The Star of Savoy. Where is it?
You have to believe me. I don't know whether you're talking about a burlesque dancer, a passenger liner, or a military decoration. What is the Star of Savoy, and why am I supposed to know something about it?
You're jesting, of course.
Oh, believe me, I never jest with a head like this. Look, Bessie, you got the wrong number. Do you think I killed this man here?
Oh, indeed I don't. He was killed by a man named Charles MacDonald. You know Mr. MacDonald, of course.
Oh, vaguely, yes. He was dead when I met him.
Delightful sense of humor. I always admire a man with a sense of humor.
Good. Well, then, look, I am going to get out of here.
That's possible. Entirely possible. After you tell me where I may find the Star of Savoy, Mr. Rogue.
I don't know. I don't know anything about it. Don't even know what it is.
It's a large diamond, Mr. Rogue, one of the largest in the world, formerly owned by the Hohenzollern family, recently the property of a New York collector of famous jewels. It's a magnificent jewel, Rogue. Magnificent. Where is it?
I don't know. I suppose you think I came here after it.
Oh, I wouldn't know about that, Mr. Rogue. But you say you met my friend Charles MacDonald after he was dead. Very cleverly put. But when MacDonald left here, he went from here directly to your office. He was carrying the Star of Savoy in his coat. I know that to be true. I was following him.
Well, we searched him, the police and I. He didn't have the Star of Savoy or any other diamond over a carat any place on him. That's the truth. Only thing I found on him was this address. That's why I came here.
That's very strange. Yes, quite baffling. Have you met a strikingly beautiful girl? Tall, black hair, brown eyes, very appealing.
You mean MacDonald's wife?
Well, yes, MacDonald's wife. You've met her?
Yes, she was at my office when he died. Who is this stiff here?
Oh, a former partner of mine. He was attempting to double-cross me, poor fellow. You see, Rogue, he and I had a market for the Star of Savoy, a very fine market. That's why we hope to get it from Mr. MacDonald today. MacDonald was most unreasonable. Of course, I intend to continue in my efforts to acquire the Star of Savoy. This dark young lady, Mrs. MacDonald, was she alone with him at any time? Either while he was alive or after his death?
Well, no. She came into my office and saw that he was dead and fainted.
Oh, I see. Well, Mr. Rogue, I'm inclined to believe your story about knowing nothing about my diamond. I think I'll be running along. But just to make sure that you don't use your meager talents to pursue me, I'll have to... Oh!
We'll return to our story in just a moment. First, one often hears that a woman's eyes, the window to the soul, are her most expressive features. But did you ever consider that a woman's hair can be very expressive, too? It can tell the world whether the woman is fastidious or careless. That's why so many millions of smart women depend on Fitch's Dandruff Remover Shampoo to make their hair express good care and exquisite grooming. For Fitch's Dandruff Remover Shampoo is a thorough cleansing agent, and while it cleanses, it also reconditions the hair. This reconditioning action perks up drab and tired hair strands, gives them more elasticity and a bright, gleaming texture. Then, since Fitch's Dandruff Remover Shampoo is completely soluble in water, it leaves no dull, soapy film on your hair. It rinses out quickly and leaves the hair shining and lustrous. Let your hair be an expression of loveliness. Ask your beauty operator to give you a professional application of Fitch's Dandruff Remover Shampoo, or buy an economical bottle at your drug or toilet goods counter. Fitch is spelled F-I-T-C-H. Now back to Dick Powell as Private Investigator Richard Rogue in Rogue's Gallery.
Well, what had started out to be a lovely, lucid day had certainly turned out to be as ugly and mad as a giraffe with a sore throat. The date I had with Betty Callahan had been interrupted by a stranger walking into my office and dropping dead of pre-digested murder. I got knocked silly and came to find a guy named Moore politely annoyed with me about a diamond I'd never seen. So annoyed with me, in fact, that he was determined to kick my teeth out. I saw that big shoe swing from my jaw, and I ducked right into it. Oh, it would have been so easy for me to pass out again. But I fought it. I couldn't. I needed the time. I vaguely heard the fading footsteps of Mr. Moore through the aura of pain which was surrounding me like a fog. And after he'd faded out, I sat there for a while. Then I got to my hands and knees and crawled until my head cleared a little. When I got to my feet, I ran out of the house, grabbed a cab for the Park Crest Hotel. I thought I'd find more there looking for Mrs. McDonald. Oh, I must have looked like a hit-and-run victim as I approached the very proper clerk. He backed away, but I reached across the counter and grabbed him.
Let go of me.
I want some information. I want it fast. What room is Mrs. Charles McDonald of New York City in?
Mrs. McDonald?
Stop stalling. What's her room number?
We have a Mr. McDonald, but there is no Mrs. McDonald. His wife is in New York.
How do you know that?
I sent a wire to her for him last night. There's no Mrs. McDonald out here. And now let me go before I call the house officer.
I remembered then. Mr. Moore had hesitated when I pegged that tall, dark girl as Mrs. McDonald. That girl was an imposter. My head was still doing the Virginia reel with variations on the turns, but I couldn't slow up now. In spite of the racket inside my skull, I was thinking straight and clearly. I ran to my office. It was only a block. And I got that glass that Mrs. McDonald had been twirling in her fingers as Urban questioned her. I took it down to police headquarters and asked the sergeant at the Fingerprint Bureau to dust it for prints and telephoto the prints to the FBI in Washington. I told him he could find me in my office. I went back to my office and sank into my swivel chair and let sleep take over.
Richard. Wake up, Richard. Richard, what has happened to you? Oh, honey, you look so awful.
Oh, Betty. Hello, baby. What are you doing here?
It's 7 o'clock, Richard. You told me to meet you here at 7 o'clock.
7?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, 7 it is? Oh, hey, what about those fingerprints?
Fingerprints?
Excuse me a minute, baby. I gotta call the Identification Bureau.
You should be in a hospital. Oh, Richard, you can't take me to dinner looking like that.
Oh, honey, think how I feel.
Identification Bureau. Sergeant James.
Oh, Sergeant, this is Richard Rogue. Did you get an answer from the FBI on those prints I gave you?
Yeah, just came in, Rogue. They belong to a girl named Alice Ryan. 3 years ago when they took them at the aircraft company where she worked. She lived at 4435 Ethel Avenue in North Hollywood.
Any criminal record?
Arrested once in a competence rap 4 years ago. Dismissed for lack of evidence.
Thanks, Sarge. I owe you a cigar. Come on, Betty. We're going to go to North Hollywood. I'll explain why in a cab. Come on.
No, Alice does not live here anymore. She moved into Los Angeles about 7 months ago when she quit her job at the airplane factory.
Did she leave a forwarding address?
Oh, yes, I'll get it for you. Just a minute.
You think she has the diamond, don't you, Richard?
Sure. She lifted it off McDonald's body when she fainted over him.
Oh, how awful. Here it is. It is a long drive from here in Los Angeles.
Thanks.
Alice Ryan, no, she doesn't live here anymore. She came into money or something. She lives in Hollywood now.
Do you know her address there?
A big guy around here after an hour ago. It's North Serrano. No, wait a minute, I'll get it for you.
A big man. That's the man
Yeah, that's the man. He has an hour's head start.
Here it is. I wrote it down for you.
Oh, thank you, sir. Okay, now, Betty. Now ring the bell and then stand back. Clear back against the wall and stay away from the windows.
All right, Richard. You take care of yourself now.
I always do. Stand where you are, and I'll go knock on the door.
All right.
You stay right there, Betty. I'm going to try the door. Now stay where you are.
I will.
Come in. Come in, Mr. Rogue, and don't attempt to be clever because you present a beautiful target there in the doorway.
Where's Alice Ryan?
She's here. Drop your gun, please, Mr. Rogue. I can see you, you know. I have a bit of advantage. Drop your gun, Mr. Rogue. Close the door, Mr. Rogue. Now that I've turned the light on, you can see that you have found Alice Ryan.
Oh, brother.
Yes, I'm sorry. I was forced to eliminate her, Mr. Rogue. She was most unreasonable about giving me the Star of Savoy. She chose to pit her ordinary brain against my genius in this race to see who would be the possessor of the stone after Charles MacDonald was eliminated. And now, Mr. Rogue, you find yourself in much the same position.
Yeah, I guess I'm not very smart. You have the diamond?
Indeed, I have. And I think perhaps you deserve a glimpse of it. There. Is that not the most inspiring sight you've ever seen, Mr. Rogue? Look at it. Glistening there. 100 people have died, I would imagine, Mr. Rogue, in the history of this stone. Yes, at least 100. I have spent the last 10 years scheming, contriving, bribing, stealing to get this lovely thing. And now, Mr. Rogue, it's mine.
Yeah, you got it. What are you going to do with it? Just sit there and look at it?
I can get $1 million for it, $1 million in cold cash and no questions asked. $1 million. I'm not at all sure that is enough, Mr. Rogue. And now, I'm afraid I'm going to be forced, regretfully, to remove you.
There was cold murder in the ice-blue eyes that were looking into mine. Moore was enjoying every breath of my last few minutes on Earth. He was waiting for me to break. And all the time, he was talking in that cultured iceberg voice. Then I saw Betty. She was hugging the wall in the next room, creeping silently toward the killer. I wanted to shout at her, to tell her to go away. And then...
Richard, are you all right?
Yeah, I knocked his gun up in the air when you scared him silly. Oh, Betty, bless your little pointed head, but why did you do it?
Oh, Richard.
Betty, well, of all the times to faint, isn't that just like a woman? Well, the police took it from there, and the story was pretty plain. Moore was the head of a gang of international jewel thieves, consisting of the man I found dead on Squirrel Hill, Alice with the dark black hair, and himself. They had offered Charles McDonald a fortune to steal the Star of Savoy from the Park Avenue establishment where he was employed and where it was on exhibition. They planned to kill him when he delivered the stone. But the trio triple-crossed themselves, and finally only Moore remained alive, which was a temporary thing, because Moore soon paid the final score for the murders he committed. And, I got a $5,000 reward for breaking the case. $5,000 for just getting batted around a little. That isn't bad, is it, huh? I split the reward with Betty Callahan, who certainly saved my life. And she went right out and spent her half on a fur cape. You know, women should never have money. They don't know how to handle it. Of course, the first time she wore the cape, she looked so lovely that I took her to the races and lost my half on a horse named Investigator. Oh, well, money isn't as important as true love, but there's a lot more of it. You know what I mean? This is Dick Powell again, ladies and gentlemen. It's awfully nice to meet you on a new network. I hope you enjoyed our story tonight. Ray Buffum wrote it. Leith Stevens composed and conducted the music, and Dee Engelbach produced and directed. Be with us again next Sunday, will you? We have a story for you about a triangle, a rendezvous, and a plan that failed. We call it Lady with a Gun. Thanks for listening, and now here's Jim Doyle.
Listen again next week at this same time to hear Dick Powell as Private Investigator Richard Rogue in Rogue's Gallery.
Laugh a while, let a song be your style. Use pitch shampoo. Don't despair, use your head, save your hair. Use pitch shampoo.
After and between Fitch shampoos, you can keep your hair shining and manageable by using a few drops of Fitch's Ideal Hair Tonic every day. Fitch's Ideal Hair Tonic is not sticky or greasy, yet it gives your hair that well-groomed look.
Welcome back. Well, this was interesting because it was the first episode after a year of being on another network that we get a whole introduction to the Rogue character that we've not been able to hear before. And I imagine there were probably similar efforts in the premiere of the series in summer of 45, and then on the first episode for Mutual. So this was kind of interesting to hear. And in the end, Betty turns out to be smarter with money than Rogue, because at least she's got her fur still, while all Rogue has is the memory of making a losing bet. For Rogue's sake, I hope the income tax back then still allowed you to deduct gambling losses. Well, now we turn to listener comments and feedback. I received an email regarding the Latin type, the compartment on the train, two similar attaché cases. Seems like an old plot from the Abbotts. Maybe it's the Blue Rocket Express, episode 366, but Rogue's Gallery came first. Suggesting that Rogue may have been, or that the Abbotts may have been borrowing from Rogue. I think Blue Rocket Express took some very different turns. The plot of mystery and murder on a train is very similar to a lot of different stories. But it goes on to evaluate some of the characters. It goes, I find George Valentine to be too one-dimensional. Same with Edmund O'Brien's Johnny Dollar. However, Dollar got some good wisecracks in the Bertie Baskerville matter. Her outfit was so skimpy that a silkworm would hang himself. Need more like Charles Russell. O'Brien needs to lighten up. Richard, Rogue, and Barrie Craig have better banter. Sherlock Holmes is not my cup of tea. And hope John Lund spices it up. Thanks for the fun. Radio Old Style from Sparky in San Diego. Thanks so much. And we do actually just have 2 O'Brien episodes left. So we'll see what John Lund has to bring shortly. On Facebook, Patrick comments on episode 492, Blue Eyes. She was to feminine architecture what the atom bomb was to science. That's a great line. Indeed. And this one had another one. She had a figure with enough O's in it to put it in the $1 million column. Dick Powell was the original with this sort of manner. Finally, we have a nice review from iTunes from Carolyn. I love listening to the Sherlock Holmes stories, and now I've moved on to Rogue's Gallery. Love the podcast. Gonna have to check out the Dragnet podcast everyone else has posted about. Thanks. Well, thank you so much, Carolyn, for your nice review on iTunes. And we always welcome both reviews and ratings, as so many people look at those when determining whether to subscribe to a podcast. But that will actually do it for us for today. We will be back tomorrow with Let George Do It, and next week another exciting trip inside Rogue's Gallery. I encourage you, if you've not already, to nominate the great detectives of old-time radio in the culture arts category at podcastawards.com. They're taking their annual nominations. And when you do that, nominate any other podcast that you happen to enjoy. It's a great chance for them to be recognized. Podcastawards.com. This episode of The Great Detectives of Old Time Radio is brought to you by the generous support of our listeners. Well, it's time for today's episode of Let George Do It. This one is called The Iron Cat.
Personal notice. Danger is my stock and trade. If the job's too tough for you to handle, you got a job for me, George Valentine. Write full details. Standard Oil Company of California, on behalf of independent Chevron gas stations and standard stations throughout the West, invite you to Let George Do It. The Iron Cat, a transcribed adventure of George Valentine.
Dear Mr. Valentine, it's just by luck that last night I didn't kill myself. Yes, kill myself. Mr. Valentine, will you please stay in your office? I'm sure I can be there before 6. I need your help desperately tonight. Tonight, now that my eyes are more open, I need you. I need someone to help keep me from killing other people. Oh, thank heaven you waited. Oh, yes, forgive my appearance.
No, come on in, Mr. Ramsey. Here, take the bags for you.
I was out all night last night.
Hello. I'm Claire Brooks.
How do you do? I walked. I haven't changed my clothes. Oh, certainly have interfered with your dinner hour, haven't I?
Oh, we had sandwiches and coffee sent up. Do you want some?
You look as though you could use something to eat, Mr. Ramsey.
I don't know. I haven't. I'll put them right here. They're not suitcases. Tape machine, the other one's a speaker.
Tape machine?
Recorder, my own, my manufacture. Ramsey Dill Company. I designed it. But I neglected the weight. Like carrying 2 elephants. Oh, that's better.
Here's a cup for you. Sugar if you want it.
Oh, thank you. Oh, coffee. Beautiful. Well, I brought those up here for some reason or other. Show you something, I suppose. Oh, well, maybe this will wake me up. You understand I'm mad, both of you. Crazy, wacky as a loon. I forget things. I shake when I shouldn't. Too touchy, you work too hard, too neurotic, too serious, too unpleasant. Oh, yeah, sugar. 2 lumps.
All
right. Suppose you start at the beginning, Mr. Ramsey.
The sad saga of me. It's nothing very original. Work too hard. At least that's what people keep telling me.
You run this Ramsey Dill Company?
With Edward Dill, my best friend. 5 years, and we're finally doing all right. Business, I mean. I expected to be around next week when we were to sign $1 million contract.
Expected? Is there any connection between the past tense and you saying you wanted to kill yourself?
Oh, no. That's I'm over that now. That's something else now.
Killing other people.
Oh, I am tired, Mr. Valentine. Confused. It's my wife, Martha. My little melodrama of self-destruction last night was only because I couldn't stand the thought of losing her.
What do you mean?
One of those tapering off things, a whole year of less and less interest in each other. Of course, it's my fault. Well, that's what everyone says. I've always believed it. They've said it so much.
But is it?
I thought so. I've had to get this work done, the machine. My partner is a good salesman, good personality, but I'm the one who has the standard, the reputation. I'm the electrical engineer.
Oh.
I did break down and let Martha take me on a vacation 2 months ago, hoping I could mend things. But it only made it worse. I got shot in the leg.
What?
You what? Mr. Valentine, I won't draw any conclusions for you. Until last night, I never drew any myself. Well, we were hunting. Accidents happen. Any number of people out looking for deer with guns. I never even bothered trying to find out who thought I wore horns. I was too upset. I couldn't.
What do you mean, too upset?
Martha talked of going away to visit her sister up north. She went out more and more frequently to her old office. She used to be a decorator. Here, I'll show you what I mean.
Huh? I see. There's a light plug.
Oh.
Here we are.
Yeah. It takes a second to warm up. You understand, I don't eavesdrop. The machine's on all the time at home, that's all. I've used it to check quality. Never even noticed the words people were saying, and... Oh, here we are.
Martha, what's the matter with that butler of yours? He looked at me cross-eyed when I came in.
Robert's all right, Eddie.
How much does he know? He's always admired Fred.
He's all right. I've paid him extra. Don't worry. Drink your drink.
Hey, what goes on?
It's Edward Dill, my partner, my best friend, the man I turned to when I thought my wife might leave me.
He know I'm here?
I guess so.
I'll run up in a minute.
Eddie, tell him he doesn't look well. He won't believe me.
Sure, I know. But won't he suspect?
Oh, my... That awful machine of his isn't on, is it? I hate that thing.
Take it easy. That machine is going to make us a lot of money. The Ramsey Dill Company. That's us.
Oh, don't talk about it. I can't. Besides it... You going fishing this weekend, Eddie?
Yeah, I thought I would.
I saw you buying tackle when I was down at the decorator's office today.
Go down there quite a bit, don't you?
Yes. I'm visiting my sisters, you know.
Oh, this weekend?
Just for a few days. I won't stay, but Fred will be at Palm Springs with his doctor friend, so... Oh, here, another drink. I don't think I'll go back to work. I haven't really decided... Oh, Eddie, I'm so scared.
Now, take it easy, Martha.
If only it had worked out right that time before on the hunting trip.
I said take it easy. This is better anyway for the future. Well, look who's here. Hello, Fred.
Mr. Valentine, this is all mixed up. Until last night, I blamed myself for everything.
Until you heard this tape.
No. They were good friends. I knew that. But, even Robert's been acting so strangely. Dr. Baldwin was going to pick me up this afternoon for Palm Springs. But I phoned. I told him not to. Martha had already left the house for her sisters. I was alone with Robert.
Wait a minute. Who is this doctor friend of yours?
What? Of mine? Oh, no. I've only met him a few times. Of Dill's, an old friend of his, I found out. I thought the doctor was just interested in me. He kept telling me I needed a rest.
Dr. Baldwin wouldn't be a psychiatrist by any chance.
What an appropriate question. I don't blame you. And he talked like one, but I found out he was just a general practitioner, a friend of Dill's. Listen, there's just a bit here.
I'll take care of everything, Mrs. Ramsey. Don't worry. Just the way you want it. Of course he needs a rest. It's the best thing for him, isn't it? I'm only doing what any old friend would do.
I know this is all confused, but listen to me. At noon, I telephoned the decorator. And Martha's never been there. Never. Not in the past year. It's all a lie. And my friend, Edward Dill.
Incidentally, was Edward Dill on that hunting trip with you and your wife?
Of course he was. My best friend. And this weekend he's out fishing, but I phoned his lodge. No answer. Another lie. And so back to my wife. I called long distance to her sister. Was she there? She hadn't even written her for a month.
Uh-huh.
Now, look. Here, look. This was on my wife's desk.
What's that, a blotter?
It's her writing. It's backwards. But I brought some of her own notes and things to prove it's the same handwriting.
Uh-huh. The blotter she used to blot a check, dated today.
She must have written it this morning before she left the house.
To Dr. G.F. Baldwin. Hey, $5,000.
George.
A personal friend of Dill's. A doctor who made only a few visits. I don't believe I ever would have returned from Palm Springs, wherever it was he was going to take me. It sounds so crazy when you say it. I'm such a fool.
Supposing that doctor could manage to get you put away, Mr. Ramsey.
I couldn't think. Why? Why these people hate me? But I know now it isn't just that. I remembered the big deal our company will make next week. I've served my usefulness. Oh, yes. I'm sure I'd be quite easy to commit. And Mr. Valentine, I'm not proud of this. This afternoon, I actually spied on Martha. She went to Edward Dill's apartment. That's where they are now, the two of them.
Now, let me ask you something. Is that servant of yours, Robert, still out at your house?
Yes, Robert used to be a friend of mine.
That's what I mean. And maybe they've paid him extra. If I twist his arm a little, he might change sides again and fill in the whole story. No, sit still, Mr. Ramsey. I'm going alone. Get some rest there on the couch. Hey, Brooksy, feed him my sandwiches. I'm going out to feed this snide little plot right back down somebody's throat. Robert. Looks like I'm a little late. Somebody else has been doing the feeding. Nice, brutal going over. Cracked over the side of the head. I guess you won't be telling any stories for a while, will you? Okay, I'll get you a doctor, friend, while we go at this in a different direction. Miss Beggs, the other nurse says you're Dr. Baldwin's assistant, that right?
His bookkeeper, bottle washer, and hand holder for 30 years. And I'm busy now with the bills, thank you.
Well, I'm busy myself, lady. I want to see the doctor. A guy got knocked on the head, and the police are out looking at him now.
Well, we've got plenty of business. Send him to the emergency hospital.
Look, lady, look. I don't need the doctor for that. I need him for something else, some fast questions.
The doctor's out. O-U-T, out.
Oh, that's great.
Now, who got knocked over the head? Somebody like you?
Guy out of the house I just came from. Look, Miss Beggs, you keep the books, huh? Send out bills for Dr. Baldwin?
Send out his laundry, too, when he forgets. See that he eats his lunch.
Oh, sure. But there's a man named Ramsey who's been a patient of the doctor's. Check?
Well, yes. Doctor's called at their house a few times. Now, but, mister, I'm working late tonight, and
If you don't answer me, the police will ask it. Did you send a bill to Mrs. Martha Ramsey today?
A note? Of course. Doctor was leaving town. He wanted some payment.
$5,000.
5 what? Well, I I didn't know the amount they'd agreed on.
$5,000 for just a few visits. Lady, just tell me why he charged so much.
But why, he wouldn't. I don't know. It was just one of those mental cases. And the doctor was going to drive him up to a sanitarium this weekend. Maybe that's why.
Sanitarium? Palm Springs?
Well, near there. You see, this Mr. Ramsey should have been locked up long ago. That's what I'm told. Look, mister, that's where the doctor is now.
Huh? Where?
Out to pick up this man in his car, this Mr. Ramsey, at their house.
No, he's not. I just came from there.
Well, maybe they've already left. Did you look around the side drive?
Oh. Hey, Skip it. Give me your phone.
Hey, Valentine, we found this guy Robert you told us about and sent him to the hospital.
Lieutenant Riley, that's not what I asked.
Don't interrupt me. Yes, we found a car belonging to a Dr. Baldwin out on the side drive. So we're 14 jumps ahead of you. We weren't blind like you, pal. We looked around, and guess what we found in the doorway of the study? The doctor himself. Only he's dead.
That's right, Valentine. The doctor's dead. Struck over the head with a blunt instrument. For your information, the same one that hit Robert. And just to make it complete, guess what that instrument was? It was a cat. An iron cat.
We'll return to tonight's adventure of George Valentine in just a moment. For your everyday driving on your vacation trip, nothing's more important to your safety than clear vision from the driver's seat. And a clouded, dirty windshield can be mighty annoying as well as a hazard. That's why you like the courteous, speedy windshield service everybody gets at standard stations and independent Chevron gas stations where you don't have to ask for it. Taking care of your windshield is as natural for men at these service stations as it is for you to say good morning to your neighbor. And they do the job in a jiffy because they have everything at hand within an arm's reach of your car. So for your driving safety and for your visual comfort, depend on the cheerful windshield service offered you at independent Chevron gas stations and standard stations where they say and mean, we take better care of your car. Back to tonight's adventure of George Valentine. An iron cat. That was the instrument which struck down Dr. Baldwin. The doctor who, for $5,000, was apparently going to drive Mr. Ramsey off to a private sanitarium this weekend. And the iron cat was also the instrument which almost killed Robert, the Ramsey servant, who might have been on Mr. Ramsey's side. If your name is George Valentine, you know that this is one case where you'll have to work fast.
What is this iron cat anyway, Riley?
It's a doorstop. Used to be right here by the front door. Weighs 8 or 10 pounds. It's a nice weapon. The killer just grabbed it up and slugged both of them. The doctor and Robert.
Uh-huh. Where'd you find it?
Oh, down that trail there through the woods, almost a mile. Killer left it that way and tossed this in the bushes, I guess. It's the path to the other road.
Came on foot, huh? Car might have been seen by the main entrance.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Hey, where you going?
To talk to the lady of the house, Mrs. Martha Ramsey. Mrs. Ramsey, what kind of a railroading job were you planning on your husband anyway? To ferry him out to a sanitarium someplace?
No, stop it. I love him. I love him.
Well, Valentine, now look what you did.
Quiet, will you, Riley? I'm just beginning to guess what I did. Where's Dill? Didn't you bring Dill?
I'm right here, Valentine. Will you lay off of
Now, take it easy, you.
But Martha thinks her husband killed the doctor, don't you understand? That he took the iron cat and slugged Robert and then killed the doctor.
Eddie, please.
To get away from them. Just more people that he couldn't trust. Like he wouldn't trust us, like he wouldn't trust anybody.
What are you talking about?
Go on. Just who does she love?
Her husband, of course. Oh, not me. I'm a friend, that's all.
You were together when you were popping, weren't you?
We've lied to him about everything for months. We've had to. Fred got worse and worse. That's why the doctor didn't want Martha around when he took him away. He was afraid there might be trouble, even though Fred signed his own papers.
He signed what? Ramsey signed what?
His own papers. He signed them right here. Oh, it's a thing you have to sign. You're being locked up of your own free will and volition.
Ramsey committed himself to the sanitarium?
He did, for observation. Baldwin was no expert, no psychiatrist. They're up at the sanitarium. Oh, a couple of them have been here in the house, even though Ramsey didn't know who they were.
We checked into Baldwin, Valentine. His reputation's solid.
Of course, Martha came to my place this afternoon. At least I don't have a tape machine, and I do have a big shoulder to cry on. Oh, don't you understand? I like Fred just as much as she does.
And with him out of the way, you would have made a lot more money on this deal of your company's next week.
What? Look, sure, we kept it a secret. I mean, about Fred. We had to. People might think he couldn't be cured. The deal might not go through. And Martha had to pretend things about visiting her old office so she could see the doctor and see me for help.
I'll answer.
Now, Till, listen to me.
Yeah,
that shooting accident 2 months ago when Ramsey was shot, and Martha and you...
Well, what about it? Mm-hmm. It was the deputy sheriff who shot him, you know.
Is that so?
What's that?
Yes, a deputy sheriff on a hunting trip. Oh, I'm not kidding. It was an accident. Yeah. But poor Fred, he wouldn't even listen to him.
Sergeant. Thanks. It was Ramsey, all right. His fingerprints are on that iron cat. The butler, Robert, says it happened just as the doctor drove up. Ramsey got all excited when he saw the doctor's car and tried to run. Said he'd changed his mind about commitment. Robert tried to stop him, and Ramsey picked up the iron cat, and that's the last he remembers. Well, good enough?
And he warned me himself. He laid myself wide open to being made a sucker.
He'll say anything when he's like that, Mr. Valentine. When he gets to feeling persecuted. Feeling nobody likes him. Why, if you so much as open your mouth when he's like that...
Wait a minute, where you going? Wait, what's the matter?
Oh, I'm sorry. I fell asleep, Miss Brooks. Mr. Valentine's not back.
No, not yet.
Oh.
Do you like a magazine, Mr. Ramsey? I'm reading the craziest love story. What's the matter?
Nothing. Do you think I can trust Mr. Valentine, Miss Brooks?
Well, of course. Don't be ridiculous. What? There, that's probably him.
No, wait a minute. Don't answer it yet.
What?
Well, he said he'd come back, didn't he? He didn't say he'd phone.
Well, yes, but maybe something happened.
No, don't. Please don't.
Mr. Ramsey.
What could have happened that would make you phone?
But I can't just let it ring. Mr. Ramsey!
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to kick the cord loose.
You shouldn't have done that.
I'm not awake yet. I was reaching to answer
yes,
it.
Of course.
You believe me, don't you?
No. But I don't think it's very important, do you?
Oh.
Here, there's a little coffee left in the sandwich. I can warm it up on the plate.
Please, don't look at me that way. I am sorry.
I think maybe we should skip it.
Why don't you believe me? Why don't you? Why? Oh, forgive me. I'm so tired.
Of course you are.
So much has happened, I can't even remember. A man is a peculiar thing. This office building is nice. I like it here at night. It's like a man. So many empty rooms, so many dark ones.
Mr. Ramsey, I think I'd better call the night janitor downstairs.
What?
To tell him about the telephone for tomorrow, that's all.
You want to leave me, don't you?
No, of course not. It'll just take a minute.
It's 10 flights down. No, wait, please, don't leave
I'll
me.
just go buzz the elevator.
Miss Brooks! You don't understand. I'm afraid to be alone.
Well, yes, I do. You came to us for help, Mr. Ramsey. That's what we want to do. Help you.
Of course, I know what you're thinking. What you've thought all along, the way you listened to the story I told.
Story?
I did tell Mr. Valentine something, didn't I?
Don't you remember what you told us?
You don't like me. You don't understand me. You and Mr. Valentine have never once really intended to... What's that?
Siren. I don't know. Fire, maybe. Somebody speeding.
Of course.
I think I do understand you, Mr. Ramsey. And I'd like to talk to you. If you'd just sit down and...
Robert didn't understand me.
What?
I told him I knew I needed help. I'd certainly go to the sanitarium later on. He refused to understand. Like all the others, my wife, Dill, everyone. And it wouldn't have happened if Robert hadn't tried to interfere. So much blood on that iron cat.
No.
Listen, that siren's coming here.
No, it's not. It's just going by, going down the street. It's not coming here. I'm sure it's not.
Look, now there are men coming in the building. You and Mr. Valentine, you're interfering too, aren't you?
No, we're not.
There. If there aren't any lights, they won't know we're here.
Mr. Ramsey, please listen to me.
I wanted to be helped. To believe my wife loved me.
Get away. Please, get away.
Listen.
I'll tell him you're not here. I'll tell him that
All
you...
move closer and closer to me.
Valentine, did you hear that? Brooksy! Brooksy! No lights. Oh, they're not here, but we just heard...
Hey, what was that?
I don't know, but come on. Riley, wait. What?
Could be any place. He's got her. One of the other officers, the fire escape, the storeroom. Now, you listen to me. Don't you understand? The closer we get, the more danger she's in. Go on, beat it. And make lots of noise. Oh, where is that blasted plug?
All right. Let's look someplace else, Valentine. Maybe she's downstairs. Let's take a look.
Oh, here it is. Now, warm up, will you? Warm up and work fast.
Oh, take it easy. That machine is going to make us a lot of money. The Ramsey Dill Company.
Sure, Ramsey, you're sick.
Talk about it, I can't. Besides, if...
Everybody will tell you that you're sick.
Yeah,
Even the doctor's trying to pick on you. He says it, too.
Down at the decorator's office today.
We're down there quite a bit, don't
And listen to Dill.
Yes, but I'm busy.
That guy's trying to steal your wife.
Oh, this weekend?
And your precious machine.
I won't stay, but...
Hear that, sucker? Atta boy, come on closer.
So here...
Come on, you sucker. We'll all tell you off. We're all trying to frame you. Make a fool out of you.
Stop it.
Ramsey the sucker.
Stop it.
Kick them all in the teeth, Buster.
Wait, you get yours.
Hey, Brooksy. Brooksy. Where are you, Brooksy?
Oh, George. Kept his hand over my mouth. The closer you came, the more frightened he got, and the more...
I know, Tom. I'll never forgive myself.
Well, it's all over now. The boys took him away to the hospital.
It wasn't your fault, George.
Of course it wasn't. We can't be right all the time.
Danger's our stock and trade. Oh, we do lay ourselves wide open.
You can't help it if a nut reads the wrong meaning into everything. His wife and partner's concern over him, their worry and whispering.
Riley, I don't want you to get taken in for a sucker either.
Huh?
No, I don't want you reading the wrong meaning into things.
George.
Things like, just because Ramsey socked Robert with that iron cat, he killed the doctor, too.
What? Well, Robert himself said the doctor's car just drove
What
up.
about that $5,000 check?
Well, it's steep, but they wanted to keep it quiet.
You investigated the doctor yourself. Solid reputation. Of course Martha Ramsey paid it because she was so upset, didn't question it. But go over and pick up those two things there, Riley.
What are you talking about,
Those
darling?
two boxes over there, what's left of them. The tape machine and the speaker. See how heavy they are, how clumsy. Go ahead.
Yeah, well... Sure, maybe they are, but...
All right, then think back. Ramsey left the house carrying those, you know. Only he socked Robert right by the front door.
Hey, wait a minute.
Sure. And the doctor's body was found in the house, too. But the weapon, the iron cat, was found nearly a mile from the house, where he supposedly discarded it or tried to hide it. Go on, pick up those boxes again. And now tell me how he'd carry the iron cat, too.
Holy smoke. It can't be done.
See what I mean? Now, suppose the murderer was there and saw what Ramsey did to Robert. Saw him drop the weapon right there by the door. And quick-like decided to take advantage of the escaped madman.
Killed the doctor when he went inside the house. Left on foot just like Ramsey had, and then threw the iron cat into the bushes to make it look worse for Ramsey.
Sure, the final touch that backfired.
But I don't understand who could have...
Riley, who might very likely have driven up with the doctor? You know, it's always bothered me that he came all alone to take a man to a sanitarium. And who'd be most likely to help him? And who, after 30 years, might have plenty of motive to kill him? Particularly when you remember who it really was that thanks for the doctor and admitted she herself sent that request for $5,000 to Martha Ramsey.
Miss Beggs. That old battle axe who kept the doctor's books.
Be careful, Riley. She's probably pretty much of an iron cat herself.
We did help Mr. Ramsey after all, George.
Well, they caught Miss Beggs, if that's what you mean. She admitted she'd been dipping into the doctor's funds, and he was finally catching on. Bet she tried to get 5,000 in a hurry so she could run away. Only then came along an even better opportunity.
To kill the doctor and keep the 5,000, too.
Sure. And Ramsey would have been blamed.
I don't think the poor man would have really killed me out there on the fire escape.
You don't, huh?
No.
He's sick, isn't he? In a sanitarium, isn't he?
But, George, he can be cured. I'm sure he can. There's so many people around him who want him to get well.
Okay, Angel, okay. In spite of what happened, you still say that. Sometimes I sort of like you.
Well, like? George, that and the word trust. Well, the way he used them, I would just as soon not be reminded. Darling, you could fish around and find a nicer word. Couldn't you?
Whether you're driving in city traffic or out on the open highway, there's a lot of difference between driving a car that acts dopey and driving with Chevron Supreme gasoline, which gives you that new car feeling. That's because there's a lot of difference between ordinary gasoline and Chevron Supreme. You may not have known it, but most raw gasoline contains impurities that form gum that makes rings and pistons stick and cuts down a car's power. Chevron Supreme is the gasoline that's super refined to get rid of engine-sticking gum. That's why you can depend on this premium quality gasoline for that new car feeling the year round. Try it in your car for new power, for full mileage, and the kind of driving you do. Ask for super refined Chevron Supreme at independent Chevron gas stations and standard stations where they say and mean we take better care of your car. Tonight's adventure of George Valentine has been brought to you by Standard Oil Company of California on behalf of independent Chevron gas stations and standard stations throughout the West. Robert Bailey is starred as George with Virginia Gregg as Brooksy. Let George Do It is written by David Victor and Jackson Gillis and directed by Don Clark. Wally Mayer appears as Lieutenant Riley. Harry Dobkin was heard as Ramsey, Charlotte Lawrence as Martha, Bill Boucher as Dill, Frank Hale as Miss Beggs, and Victor Rodman as Baldwin. The music is composed and presented by Eddie Dunstetter. Your announcer, John Heaston. Listen again next week, same time, same station, to Let George Do It.
This is the Mutual Don Lee Broadcasting System.
Welcome back. Well, it's just Brooksy's bad luck to be left with the crazy client, though as she says, George is able to render some service to him, both by revealing him not to be a killer, and I would also add by getting him caught and back on the way to the sanitarium. Well, now we turn to listener comments and feedback, and we have an email from Ralph who asked, like everyone else, I enjoy your comments about the show. I'm retired and listen to as many old-time radio programs as I can. You've mentioned your wife on occasion. I was wondering if she shares your interest in old-time radio shows, and I was wondering if she will ever make comments about the show. Do you ever have discussions about the shows, and does she have a different view? Do women enjoy the shows as much as men? Well, a lot of questions there. In answer to the question, my wife is definitely not into the old-time radio programs like I am. It's an interest we don't really share that much. Now, there are some programs her ears will perk up to. Life of Riley is one I think we both like. And we listen to a series together called Young Love. So there are a few series, not really the detective shows. She will occasionally tolerate one from, I think, doesn't have a whole lot of comments on them. Just not as much into the mystery genre, though there's an occasional character like Adrian Monk she'll get into. In regards to your question of whether women enjoy the shows as much as men, well, we do have our listener survey, survey.greatdetectives.net, that about 400 of you have filled out for the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio. And the results are pretty conclusive. that from the survey, our audience is 67% male and 33% female. And generally among those who are the big-time collectors of old-time radio, there tends to be a large male bias. And part of that, honestly, is because most of the shows that we have were collected and preserved by men. When you look at the old-time radio collectors groups, the people who, for example, would make transcription discs at radio stations. It was an overwhelmingly male situation. And so because of that, I'd say that the vast majority of shows that survive either appeal to both sexes or appeal very strongly to a male audience. So that may be part of the reason for the gap. But on our program, yeah, it's about 2-to-1. Though on Dragnet, it's even more pronounced, with it being about a 70-30 male to female split. Though I think it's a bit closer when it comes to the amount and the people who tend to correspond with us about the shows. But thanks so much. Good question, Ralph, and hope you enjoy listening out there in retirement. We will be back with you tomorrow with Sherlock Holmes, and next week join us for another Let George Do It adventure. Tomorrow is the last day you can make your nominations in the Podcast Awards, so I encourage you to go to podcastawards.com and nominate the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio, along with all your other favorite podcasts. This episode of the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio is brought to you by the generous financial support of our listeners. Thank you so much. I mentioned a few weeks back that the Red-Headed League had a special place in my heart as my first Sherlock Holmes story, and we got to listen to it a few weeks back in the Conway Bruce version, and now we're going to get to hear John Stanley and Alfred Shirley do it 4.5 months later on Mutual. Now, you may wonder why they chose to adapt a program that had so recently already been adapted and aired over the American airwaves. The big answer would be that it aired over ABC, which a lot of folks didn't even listen to. It really was kind of a scrappy network at the point, so there was no worry about copying. So we can kind of judge to ourselves who did it better. Here now, though, is the Red-Headed League.
Makers of Clippercraft clothes for men and 924 leading retail stores from coast to coast present the world's most famous detective, Sherlock Holmes. Our stories are based upon the character of Sherlock Holmes, created by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and the dramatizations are by Edith Meiser. Now, once more, we are about to visit Dr. Watson, the friend and chronicler of Sherlock Holmes and his amazing adventures. We find him sitting in his well-worn armchair, an eager look on his face and a humorous twinkle in his eye. Can it be that the good doctor is beginning to look forward to his weekly appearances before the microphone?
Good evening, Mr. Harris. It certainly can. And tonight I have my narrative all picked out. Have you ever noticed that red-headed people always seem to lead very eventful lives? Look at Queen Elizabeth.
Yes, and I've heard that Cleopatra was a breaktop, too, and she certainly had very few dull moments. And the stores that sell Clippercraft clothes have no dull moments either. That's because millions of men have discovered that Clippercraft gives them value beyond compare. Behind these unheard-of Clippercraft values is a triumph of American ingenuity and a really tremendous distribution idea. 924 leading stores from coast to coast have concentrated their buying power, resulting in value without precedent because of the savings in manufacturing and distribution costs. What you get is the benefit of group buying with all the friendly personal attention traditionally yours at your own local independent store. You've never seen expensive-looking suits like Clippercraft's at only $35 and $40, with a few deluxe models at $43.75. The same goes for top coats and overcoats at only $30 to $40, and sport jackets at only $24. Yes, your clothes problem is easily solved this fall. Simply compare Clippercraft with clothes selling for many dollars more. And now, Dr. Watson, shall we get back to our story?
Yes, indeed. Well, tonight I have decided to tell you the story of the Red-Headed League.
The Red-Headed League? What a curious title.
No more curious than the situation it gave rise to in Sherlock Holmes' life. One day, it was during the autumn of the year 1890, I burst in upon my friend to find him deep in conversation with a stout, florid-faced gentleman with the fiercest red hair it has ever been my privilege to observe. I was about to withdraw when Holmes pulled me abruptly into the room and closed the door behind me.
Come in, my dear Watson, come in. You couldn't possibly have come at a better time.
But, Holmes, I was afraid you were engaged.
So I am, my dear fellow. Allow me, Mr. Wilson. This is my friend and helper, Dr. Watson.
Well, how do you do, sir?
Oh, how do you do?
Sit down, Watson, sit down. I know that you share my love of the bizarre, although you've never agreed that for the strangest effects and most extraordinary combinations, we must go to life itself.
Well, you know,
Mr. Jabez Wilson here has just started a narrative which promises to be one of the most singular I've listened to for some time.
Dear me.
Now, my dear Mr. Wilson, perhaps you would have the great kindness to recommence your story.
Certainly, Mr. Holmes. As soon as I can find that newspaper clipping, now where'd I put it? I could have sworn it was in my waistcoat.
Watson, while we're waiting for Mr. Wilson to find his missing newspaper advertisement, suppose you tell me what you deduce from his appearance.
Well, really, you know. Well, let me see. I would say he was middle-aged, if you don't mind my saying. And, well, he has red hair.
Oh, obvious, Watson. Too obvious. I will come to your assistance. He has at some time done manual labor. He's a Freemason, has been in China, and has done a considerable amount of writing lately.
Well, Mr. Holmes, you fair give me the creeps. Are you one of these mind readers?
No, indeed.
Then how in the name of good fortune did you know all that about me? About the manual labor, for example. It's as true as gospel. I began as a ship's carpenter.
Your hands, my dear sir. Your right hand is quite a size larger than your left. The muscles are more developed. As for the Freemasonry, you wear a square and compass tie-pin.
I see that. But the writing, how about that?
What else can be indicated by that right cuff, so very shiny, and the left sleeve with a smooth patch near the elbow where you rest it on the desk?
Well, about China.
The fish that you've had tattooed immediately above your right wrist could only have been done in China. That trick of staining the fish's scales a delicate pink is quite peculiar to China. And when, in addition, I see a Chinese coin hanging from your watch chain, the matter becomes even more simple.
Well, I never. At first I thought you'd done something clever. But now I see there's nothing to it after all.
I begin to think, Watson, that I make a mistake in explaining. Omne ignotum pro magnifico, you know.
Oh, yes, of course.
What reputation I may have will suffer shipwreck if I'm so candid. Have you found the advertisement, Mr. Wilson?
Yes, I've got it now. It was in my watch pocket. This is what began it all, sir. You just read it for yourself.
Watson, suppose you do that for us.
Yes, with pleasure.
First, make a note of the paper and the date.
It's the Morning Chronicle of July the 27th, 1890. It's just 2 months ago.
Very well. Proceed with the advertisement.
It begins to the Red-Headed League. On account of the bequest of the late Ezekiel Hopkins, there is now another vacancy open which entitles a member of the League to a salary of £4 a week for purely nominal services. All red-headed men above the age of 21 years are eligible. Well, that's very odd. Apply in person on Monday at 11 o'clock to Duncan Ross at the offices of the League, 7 Pope's Court, Fleet Street. Dear me, Holmes, what on earth does this mean?
I think I promised you that this case was bizarre. Now, Mr. Wilson, if you'll continue with your story.
Well, it's just about as I was telling you, Mr. Holmes. I have a small pawnbroker's shop at Coburg Square. Of late years, the business has been pretty bad. I used to be able to keep 2 assistants, but now I only keep 1. I'd have a job to pay him, only he's willing to come for half wages so as to learn the business.
Obliging youth. What's his name?
Vincent Spaulding. And I couldn't want a smarter assistant, Mr. Holmes. Oh, I know he could easily earn twice what I'm able to give him. But, well, as I say, if he's satisfied, who am I to go putting ideas into his head?
Yeah. Your assistant seems to be as remarkable as your advertisement.
He only has one fault, Mr. Holmes. Photography. Snapping away with his camera, then diving down into the cellar like a rabbit into its hole to develop his pictures.
An amateur photographer, eh? He's still with you, I suppose.
Oh, yes, sir. An observing young fellow he is. He was the one that brought this advertisement to my notice. It was just this day 8 weeks when he rapped on my office door with this very paper in his hand. Come in.
Oh, Mr. Wilson, sir.
Oh, that's you, Vincent. Well, what's the matter? You look excited.
Oh, I wish to the Lord, Mr. Wilson, I was the red-headed man.
Why that?
Well, look here, sir. What it says in this paper. There's another vacancy in the League of the Red-Headed Men. It's worth a pretty penny to him that gets it.
The Red-Headed League? I never heard of it.
Never heard of the League of the Red-Headed Men? Oh, Mr. Wilson. And you eligible for one of the vacancies.
Huh? Oh, what are they worth?
Oh, merely a couple of $100 a year. But the work is slight and it needn't interfere much with one's regular occupation.
Yeah, a couple of £100 a year, you say? Here, let me see that paper, young man.
Oh, here you are, sir. You see, as far as I can make out, the League was started by a millionaire named Ezekiah Hopkins, a red-headed man himself. And he left his fortune in the hands of the trustees with instructions to provide easy berths to men who had red hair. And from what I hear, the work isn't difficult.
Yeah, but there must be millions of red-headed men.
No, not so many as you might think, sir. You see, it's confined to Londoners. And then again, it's no use if your hair is light red or dark red or anything but real blazing fire red. They've got to pick the reddest hair they can find.
Well, if there's a redder head of hair than mine in the length and breadth of London, I'd like to see it.
Well, I have seen a few that I consider redder.
What? Nonsense. Here, where's my hat?
What are you going to do, Mr. Wilson?
I'm going around to apply for that vacancy. If it was raining gold, no one can say that Jabez Wilson is a man to go out with a sieve.
And did you get the job, Mr. Wilson?
I did that, Mr. Holmes. There wasn't a head of hair that can touch mine for redness, if I do say it myself. There was thousands competing.
And what was the work?
Oh, purely nominal, like the paper said. And it paid £4 a week, regular as a clock. All I had to do was to sit at a desk in an office at that address there from 10 to 2 and copy out bits from the encyclopedia.
Educational as well as remunerative. And how long did this work continue?
Oh, about 8 weeks. I was pretty well through the A's. Abbots, archery, architecture, and the like. Then suddenly it came to an end. I went to my work, 10 o'clock as usual. The door was shut and locked, and a card was nailed on the door.
What did it say?
The Red-Headed League dissolved September 27th, 1890.
But I say, Holmes, that's today.
This very morning it was, sir. Well, I lost no time trying to find the man that hired me. £4 a week's £4, you know.
You say you tried to find the man that rented the office?
Yes, sir. I inquired from the renting agent, and he gave me the man's name and said that he'd moved to a new address.
You went there, of course.
Yes, sir.
Well?
Well, when I got to that address, it was a manufactory of artificial kneecaps. And no one had ever heard of the Red-Headed League.
So then you came straight to me?
Yes, sir. I thought it best not to lose any time.
Quite right. By the way, Mr. Wilson, this assistant of yours, Mr. Vincent Spaulding, how long had he been with you when he called your attention to the Red-Headed League?
Oh, about a month.
How did he come?
In answer to an advertisement.
Was he the only applicant?
No, sir. Oh, I had a dozen.
Why did you pick him?
Because he was and would come cheap. At half wages, in fact.
What's he like?
Small, stout built, very quick in his ways. No hair on his face, though he's not short of 30. And he has a white splash of acid on his forehead.
I thought as much. Have you ever noticed that his ears are pierced for earrings?
What? Oh, yes. He says a gypsy did it for him when he was a lad.
Watson, what day of the week is it?
Why, Saturday, of course.
Saturday, dear me, so it is. Well, Mr. Wilson, I think I may promise you some startling developments by tonight. In the meantime, Watson, I suggest we drop around sometime this afternoon to view the attractions of Saxe-Coburg Square, Mr. Wilson's exemplary assistant in particular.
Well, here we are, Holmes. This seems to be Saxe-Coburg Square.
Shabby, genteel little backwater of a place. This, I fancy, is our friend's shop. The 4-story building with the 3 gilt balls over it. Yes, the square itself seems fairly uninteresting, eh?
Yes, very depressing.
Let's see what street backs onto it on this side. Come along, Watson.
Well, can't see what difference the next street can make to our problem, if it is a problem. Well, the whole thing sounds more like a practical joke to me.
A practical joke which costs its perpetrator £4 a week? Nonsense, Watson. No man's sense of humor resides in his pocketbook.
Well, this street seems to have more life.
It's one of the chief arteries leading to the north and west. Now, let me see. What's the order of the houses here?
Order?
Yes, it's a hobby of mine to have an exact knowledge of London. First, we have Mortimer's. Then the tobacconist, the little newspaper shop, the Coburg branch of the City and Suburban Bank, the vegetarian restaurant, and McFarlane's Carriage Works. Yes, now we can go back to the shop of our friend, Mr. Wilson.
Oh, what's the hurry, Holmes? Don't walk so fast.
Found out all I want to here.
Holmes, you act as if you were taking a memory course. Why should you want to know all the shops on that street? It's just a waste of time.
Nothing that exercises the brain is a waste of time, my dear Watson. The trouble with most of us is that our brains have become flabby from lack of proper use.
Rubbish. Well, here we are, back again. Why are you thumping on the pavement with your cane, Holmes? If you want to enter the shop, why not knock on the door?
Yes, quite so, Watson. I'm afraid my etiquette is a bit faulty lately, so just to please you, I will knock on the door.
See, someone's coming on the double.
Looks like our bright little assistant.
Oh, good afternoon, gentlemen. Won't you step in?
Thank you. No, I only wish to ask you how to go from here to the Strand.
Third right, fourth left.
Smart fellow, that, eh, Watson?
Oh, I see no signs of a colossal intelligence.
Nevertheless, he is, in my judgment, the 4th smartest mind in London. As for daring, I'm not sure that he's not the 3rd.
I see nothing so startling about him.
The knees of his trousers, Watson. Didn't you notice?
No, what about them?
Most enlightening, my dear Watson. Most enlightening.
Oh, this is so much balderdash. I just about had enough of it. I'm going to have myself a cup of coffee and some cake. There's an appetizing little bake shop across the way.
Very good, Watson. Suppose you meet me back here at 10 tonight. Sharp, mind you. And kindly put your army revolver in your pocket.
Oh.
This business is serious. More serious even than I expected.
I say, Holmes, it's 10 o'clock now. How long do we have to stand here in this confounded rain? I'm soaked to the skin.
Until the other member of our party turns up, Watson.
Oh.
Ah, here comes the cab. Yes, I think he'll be in it. Yes. Good evening, Mr. Merriweather.
Look here, Holmes. Why do you have to rout me out on a night like this? Saturday night, too. I shall miss my rubber of whist. It's the first Saturday night for 27 years I've not had my whist.
My dear Merriweather, I think you'll find that tonight you're playing for higher stakes than even you are accustomed to. And I can promise the play will be more exciting.
Oh, indeed.
But come, we must hurry.
But I said...
Oh, I beg your pardon. This is my friend and colleague, Dr. Watson.
How do you do, sir?
This way, gentlemen.
But where are we going? Mr. Wilson's shop is here on the square.
Stop burbling, Watson. Follow me and don't waste time.
In your message to me, Holmes, you said something about John Clay. The murderer, thief, smasher, and forger.
John Clay, who is he?
My dear Watson, John Clay is one of our most colorful and dangerous criminals. A young man, but at the head of his profession. I'd rather have my bracelets on him than on any criminal in London.
And I've heard that his grandfather was a duke, and he himself had been educated in Oxford and Eton.
Yes, he'll crack a crib in Scotland Yard one week and be raising money to build an orphanage in Cornwall the next.
We've been on his track for years, Mr. Holmes, and have never set eyes on him.
Well, I trust I may have the pleasure of introducing you tonight. Here we are. Down this narrow passageway. Better let me go first.
Look here, Holmes. I don't like the looks of this at all. This passage goes underground. Gives me the creeps. Oh, I say, I've run into something.
The wall, I fancy. I forgot to warn you. There's a turn here to the right.
Yes, I found that out. Thanks so much.
Ah, here's the door. Just a moment till I light my dark lantern. There. Now, Mr. Merriweather, if you'll unlock the door for us.
Just a moment till I find my key. Here we are.
Better let me go first, sir, in case we're too late. Yes. The coast seems clear enough. Come along, both of you.
Holmes, I don't like the look of this place. Your lantern throws such weird shadows. Smells like a vault.
It is a vault, my dear Watson. The basement of the City and Suburban Bank, to be exact, of which our friend, Mr. Merriweather, here is president.
But what are all those wooden crates doing here?
They explain why the most daring criminal in London is taking such an interest in this particular place.
Yes, Dr. Watson. These crates contain our French gold.
French gold?
Quite. You see, we had occasion some months ago to borrow 30,000 Napoleons from France.
France? Of all things.
Most of which has never been unpacked.
Rather an inducement for any thief.
Oh, really, Mr. Holmes, I think you're rather unduly excited. After all, the building is guarded by 10 burly watchmen.
Yes, I dare say you're not particularly vulnerable from above.
Nor from below, Mr. Holmes. Nothing but solid earth below these flagstones. Listen to this.
Don't do that, Mr. Merriweather. You want to ruin all our plans?
But look here, I say. It did sound hollow.
Not so loud, please. Now then, I think we'd better take up our positions. You, Merriweather, behind those large boxes in the corner. Watson and I will hide behind this crate. I hope you appreciate the honor, my dear Watson. This crate contains no less than 2,000 golden Napoleons, neatly packed in tinfoil.
Good heavens.
You ready? We must put the screen over my dark lantern.
And sit here in the dark?
Certainly.
Oh, dear. And I brought a deck of cards with me. I thought we might have time for a three-handed rubber.
Not tonight, Mr. Merriweather. We're dealing with a dangerous man. And unless we can take him at a disadvantage, he may do us considerable harm. One thing more. When I flash my light, Watson, close in swiftly. And if he reaches for his gun, shoot. And shoot to kill.
Dear me. I wish I'd stayed at home.
Quiet. I'm going to cover the light.
Mr. Holmes, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
I'm beginning to imagine all sorts of horrors sitting here in the dark like this.
Quiet, Merriweather.
Holmes, did you hear that? Look, there in the middle of the floor, a slit of light. Why, someone's raising one of the stone slabs. Look, there's a hand.
Catch his hands before he can put himself through the opening.
Righto.
Quick, Watson! Look out, he's got a knife!
Take your hands off me.
No, you don't. You...
Oh, if I can get my hand from...
Why, well done, Holmes, well done. You've knocked him out.
Good. Drag him up here. Now, Mr. Merriweather, if you'll give us some light. That's better.
But I say, Holmes, it's that Vincent Spaulding chap, Mr. Wilson's assistant.
Spaulding rubbish. This is John Clay, one of the most dangerous criminals in London. I've been after him for years. Help me search him, Watson.
Well, look out, Holmes. He's coming too.
Take your filthy hands off me, you scarecrow.
Yeah, now, none of that.
You may not be aware that I have royal blood in my veins. When you address me, have the goodness to say sir and please.
Oh, very well. Would you please, sir, march yourself upstairs, sir, where we can hand you over to the policemen who are anxiously awaiting your Highness's arrival? And be quick about it.
Sherlock Holmes solves his problems with simple logic. And that's the kind of thinking behind Clippercraft clothes. This was the problem. How to make it possible for independent local stores to sell fine clothes for less money than ordinary clothes cost elsewhere. And here's the answer. 924 leading stores from coast to coast concentrated their buying power to bring you the most remarkable values you've ever seen. Now, bear in mind, you get all this at your own favorite local institution, at the store you can really trust. The result is that Clippercraft has maintained its low prices despite the fact that practically everything these days costs more. It's an understatement to say these values are sensational. Clippercraft suits are only $35 and $40, with a few special numbers at $43.75. Top coats and overcoats are only $30 to $40, and sport jackets but $24. Selling beautifully tailored, expensive clothes at inexpensive low prices at the nation's finest independent stores is the great big idea behind the Clippercraft plan. That's why men who know insist on Clippercraft clothes. So be sure to visit the Clippercraft store in your city.
The leading stores in the metropolitan area that bring you Clippercraft clothes are Saks 34th, Broadway at 34th Street, Manhattan, Abraham and Straus, Brooklyn, the Boulevard Men's Shop, Kresge, Newark, New Jersey, and the B&B Clothes Shop, 16408 Jamaica Avenue, Jamaica. These great, courteous, and friendly stores are proud to add their names to that of Clippercraft in the label of your suit, top coat, sports jacket, and overcoat.
Better have another spot of whiskey, Watson.
Oh, thanks. Feels good to get onto dry clothes again after sitting around in that cold cellar for hours. Not so much, Holmes. Do you want to drown me?
God bless you, my dear fellow.
Thank you. I say, Holmes, when did you first begin to suspect that fellow Spaulding? I mean Clay.
When Wilson told me he was anxious to work for half price. Always suspect anyone or anything that comes too cheap. There's sure to be a motive behind it.
But how did you guess what the motive was? In this case, I mean.
I suspected his fondness for photography and his trick of vanishing into the cellar. The cellar. There was the end of this tangled clue. And why was someone so anxious to have our friend Mr. Wilson kept out of his shop for several hours every day? Activities in the cellar again. By the way, that red-headed league hoax is one of the cleverest dodges I've come across in some time. Too clever, in fact. When I heard of it, I knew there was only one man who could have originated it. John Clay. We've had our skirmishes, but this is the first time we've come face to face.
So you went around to have a look at the shop?
At his trousers, Watson. At the knees of his trousers, to be exact.
Oh?
You saw how worn and wrinkled they were. They spoke of hours of burrowing in the cellar. But what for? By tapping on the pavement, I found that the tunnel did not stretch out to the front. Where then? We strolled round the corner, you remember, and there stood the City and Suburban Bank, abutting our friend's pawn shop.
Of course, yes.
The inference was clear.
Yes, but how did you guess that he would make his attempt tonight?
Perfectly simple, Watson. Perfectly simple. The offices of the Red-Headed League closed this morning. Mr. Wilson's absence was no longer necessary. The tunnel was completed. But it was essential that Mr. Clay should use it soon, or it might be discovered. Tonight being Saturday would be ideal, as it would give him 2 days for escape. QED. And there you are.
Your reasoning is perfect. A long chain, and yet every link rings true.
It saves me from ennui. these little problems help me to escape the commonplaces of existence. Yes, after all, l'homme c'est rien, l'œuvre c'est tout, as Flaubert once wrote to George Sand. Man is nothing. His work is everything.
A fascinating story, Dr. Watson. What a thrilling time you must have had during the days you lived with Sherlock Holmes.
Well, I can't say I was ever bored.
And now, Dr. Watson, how about a hint about next week's story?
Oh, next week's story is laid in that colorful, dangerous, and decidedly mysterious section of London known as Limehouse. It tells how Holmes, by investigating a corrupt councilman and the activities of a large tropical bird, laid bare one of the largest dope-running outfits in the history of the Port of London. I call it the affair of the politician, the lighthouse, and the trained cormorant.
The makers of Clipper Craft Clothes for Men and 924 leading retail stores from coast to coast have brought you another in the new series of broadcasts featuring the world's most famous detective, Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes is produced and directed by Basil Lochran, with special music by Albert Berman. Holmes is played by John Stanley, Dr. Watson by Alfred Shirley. If you don't know your Clipper Craft dealer, write Clipper Craft, 200 Fifth Avenue, New York City. Be sure to listen next week to Sherlock Holmes in the affair of the politician, the lighthouse, and the trained cormorant. If you wish to attend the Sherlock Holmes broadcasts in New York, see your local Clipper Craft dealer, and he'll tell you how to obtain your tickets. This is Cy Harris speaking for Clipper Craft Clothes. This is the Mutual Broadcasting System.
Welcome back. Well, all things considered, I probably like the Conway Bruce version a little better just because of the acting and the performance. Though this one was a decent adaptation as well. Well, I recently took a look at our stats for the Blueberry Network, and I found out that we have folks listening to the program from 80 countries all around the world. United States, Britain, Australia, and Canada are top listeners, but we also had some downloads from places like New Zealand. Russia is one of our top countries, and we had downloads from places like Kazakhstan, Iran. Well, we do have comments. Lucas writes in, faithfully downloading from Japan over on Facebook. So appreciate everybody who listens. I know we have a lot of folks who are overseas and get a little taste of home listening to this. We also have some folks who just appreciate radio dramas and are from other countries. And no doubt there are some people who are learning English who use the programs to kind of help with their learning in that regards. Whatever reason for listening, I appreciate everybody out there who is tuning in. And then we have a couple quick comments from Podcast Alley. Keeps getting better to love every show and my favorite podcast. Well, thanks so much for your support. We will be back tomorrow with yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Next week, another exciting adventure with Sherlock Holmes. You won't want to miss it. Also, this is the very last day to get your nominations in for the Podcast Awards, and we'd appreciate your support, and also support shows in other categories that you enjoy. PodcastAwards.com. We're up in the Culture Arts category. Well, before we do get started, I want to encourage you, as you make your travel plans, remember this simple name, JohnnyDollarAir.com. JohnnyDollarAir.com is powered by Priceline, so you can either choose from several great published specials, or you can name your own price, negotiate to get the best deal. Plus, you can save even more by booking hotel, rental car, and airline tickets together in a combination in a vacation package for all your travel needs. Remember, visit JohnnyDollarAir.com first. Well, today's episode of Johnny Dollar has a similar issue to the Maynard Collins matter in that part of the beginning is missing. However, a lot less is missing. All we really don't get is the opening phone call teaser and the announcement. So I will go ahead and say it now. It's time for another transcribed adventure with Edmund O'Brien as that man with the action-packed expense account. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Expense account to Homicide Bureau, Department of Police, City of Hartford, Connecticut. I in no way expect the Bureau to honor this statement, but since it's my regular form of report, I will use it for convenience. The following is an accounting of expenditures during my investigation of the Glen English matter. My interest in the case has been a purely personal one. I have no fault to find with official procedure after his death or after the 2-year-old murder that was at the bottom of the whole thing. I'd known Glen since about 1947, the girl he married longer than that. In 49, after studying under the GI Bill, he turned in his private operator's license and opened his own law office. Since then, I've called on him when I needed something, and he's called on me. So it wasn't unusual that he phoned me at about 10:30 the night before I read of his death. Johnny Dollar.
Hi, Tin Star.
Who's this? That champion of perjured testimony?
Got any to sell?
Nothing that you could afford. How are things, Graham?
Okay. I'd like to ask a favor of you, Johnny.
Sure, what is it?
I've got some evidence that I want to protect, a statement. Could you get it photostated for me in the morning?
Yeah, I'm free in the morning.
This is pretty hot stuff. I'll tell you about it when I see you. In for the night?
Yeah?
Well, I may come over. If I don't see you tonight, I'll drop in on the way downtown in the morning.
So you understand that the way it was put, there was no reason for me to think twice about the fact that he didn't show up that night. But the next morning, when I read about his death in the paper, naturally our conversation came back to me. I phoned his widow and went to see her a little after noon.
Oh, I don't know. I just don't know what to think.
I'm sorry, Donna. I haven't helped matters any. Maybe I shouldn't have thrown this at you. I thought of going to the police first. But I figured it would be better if I had something more definite. There's nothing in his briefcase.
Oh, don't think of me, Johnny. Of course you should have come. But he didn't say anything about the case he was on.
What did he say when he left last night?
I wasn't here. He called me from his office about 5:30 to say he'd be late again. Asked me why I didn't go to a movie or something. So I did. So I didn't see him. Oh, Johnny, I don't know what I'm going to do.
I know, honey, I know. And that part of it's up to you. Nobody can really help you with that.
It did happen, didn't it, Johnny? I'm not going to open my eyes and see him next to me and everything all right again. Oh, I used to dream that way sometimes.
Donna, please.
But not this time. Now I wish I could never wake up.
Is somebody going to be staying with you?
I'm going to his mother's house. I can't stay here.
You shouldn't try. I'll talk to his secretary and then go to the police.
I'm not helping any, am I?
Oh, it's all right. Are his things still downtown?
His things?
His clothes and so on.
Yes. They wanted me to bring them, but I couldn't. They'll send them in a day or two. I'll try to help, Johnny. I'll try to think. But right now, I don't remember his saying anything. He did say, Goodbye, darling. On the telephone. That's what I keep remembering.
I hadn't been with him very long, Mr. Dollar. Not long enough to know as much about his business as much as some secretaries know about their employers. You know what I mean.
Yeah.
When I left the office at 5 last night, he said he had some work to do and would lock up. I asked him if he wanted me to stay, but he said it wasn't necessary.
Can we find out what the work was that kept him?
Well, he said something about a new client coming in.
And you don't know who it was?
Well, he didn't say, Mr. Dollar. He didn't mention a name.
You don't mind if I take a look through the office, do you, Miss Rollis?
Well, I suppose it's all right. Nobody's told me what to do about it.
Well, you might as well start getting everything together so we can move it out. Let me know what's coming to you in the way of salary. I'll give it to you plus a month.
Yes, sir. I'm awfully sorry about Mr. English. He was such a nice man.
I didn't really expect to find anything of value in his files, and I was right. Most of his cases were unimportant civil suits. The only thing that even hinted at possible planned murder was our phone conversation. I realized how vague it was, but I decided to come to the police anyway. I was received by your Lieutenant Frank Dolger, who sent for the reports on the case and led me to the office.
Sit down.
Thanks.
Well, I don't know, but the way I see it, you haven't given us enough to launch a full-fledged murder investigation.
Yeah, it isn't much, I realize that.
He was a friend of yours?
Yeah, but I'm not the kind to stir things up just because of that. He said he had some hot evidence that he was going to bring over, and he was killed between his apartment and mine.
What kind of evidence?
Only that it was a statement he wanted to protect. He used that word, Lieutenant, protect. I suppose you could say he might have meant against fire or something like that.
Well, the point is, Dollar, that his being killed could make things seem to be more important than they really are.
Yeah.
It's easy to read meanings into things, situations like this. You've probably run into it yourself.
Yeah, I have.
Didn't you say he thought he'd drop by in the morning?
That's right.
Well, then he wasn't necessarily on his way to your place. Maybe he went out for cigarettes or something.
Well, I thought of that, but it doesn't hold. There's a drugstore a block away from his apartment. It's in the opposite direction. I can't think of a reason for his being at the intersection where he was found, other than that he was coming to see me.
Well, I don't know. Now, I don't want you to misunderstand me. I'm not trying to slough off anything that deserves... come in.
Here's the report on that traffic death.
Oh, thanks, Wilson.
Anything else?
No, that's all, thanks. Well, we'll see what we have here. English, Glen. No, cause of death, multiple fracture of the skull. Internal injuries resulting in cerebral anoxia, possibly tendon.
What does it say about his effects?
Personal effects upon person. Overcoat, hat, brown two-piece suit.
We can skip the clothing.
Well, let's see, then. Signet ring, left ring finger, checkbook on Plymouth Bank. Cigarettes, lighter, here. Wallet containing $38. Driver's license, personal business cards, membership cards to,
Yeah, there's nothing there.
Well, I'm afraid nothing that looks like this evidence you speak of, this statement.
There we are again, Lieutenant. It could mean one of two things. That he didn't have it with him and his death was accidental. Or it could mean that it was taken from his body after he was killed.
But everything so far is based on supposition.
I know it is, Lieutenant. I know that you can't assign a squad of men every time some crank comes in with an idea.
If you can bring us anything definite, Dollar.
Yeah. Well, believe me, I do understand, Lieutenant. You suppose I could talk to the autopsy surgeon as long as I'm here?
Sure, certainly you can. It's, Dr. Ramsey, and you'll find him a very cooperative man.
Proof that the victim was not killed willfully? It appears he was struck and thrown against a parked car, his head striking the bumper. But the automobile, as lethal as it is, would hardly be a foolproof weapon to be used in willful murder, would it?
No, I guess not. Is there any way to figure how fast a car would have been traveling to cause that damage?
No, not a way in the world. Although the internal injuries would seem to indicate quite some speed.
Thanks very much, Dr. Ramsey. I won't take any more of your time.
I want to repeat, I have no fault to find with the department. I got nothing but cooperation. The photographic lab showed me the pictures of the scene. The investigating officers gave me their reports. But since everybody's conclusions had already been drawn, I saw or heard nothing that didn't support the theory of hit and run. Everyone agreed it couldn't have been anything else. I turned down a case that afternoon because I couldn't get Glen out of my mind. I went to the corner where he was killed and poked around in the snow. I didn't know what I was looking for, and I didn't find anything. The people living near the corner had already been questioned by the police and repeated to me that they hadn't seen or heard anything the night before. And that evening, in spite of a promise made to myself that I'd leave her alone for a while, I went to see his wife again.
It's all right, Johnny. Something happened to me after I got here and spent some time with his mother. She's so brave, I feel ashamed of myself. I'm okay now. What about you?
Oh, I can't get any place, Donna. Can you talk with me about it?
Sure I can.
Yeah, it's driving me crazy. I saw his secretary, and she mentioned that he was going to meet a new client. When he called to tell you that he'd be late, did he say anything about that? About meeting somebody?
No, he'd been working late quite a bit the past few weeks. He had a case coming up in the morning.
I know. I went into that at the office. It's not what I'm after. What did he say? Can you remember? Word for word, if possible?
Yes, I can. Because I said most of it. I was being a typical wife. I didn't like him working at night, and I lost my temper. I didn't give him a chance to explain anything. That's what I have to remember about the last time I talked to him.
Never mind now. Come on.
He didn't mention anybody. Just that he'd have to work late.
Will you give me the key to your apartment?
Yes.
I'll have to go through his things, Donna. I didn't want to ask you to let me when I was there earlier, but now I've got to. I've covered every other angle I can think of. I don't know why I felt almost ashamed about going through Glen's things, except that a close friend shares with you everything he wants you to know about him. And learning new things because he's dead doesn't seem right. I started with his briefcase again, reading everything in it. I moved to the desk in their living room, and from there into the bedroom. In an hour and a half, I was still looking. Then the phone rang. Hello?
Is Mrs. English there?
No, she isn't.
Who's this?
Her name is Dollar. I'm a friend of hers. I take a message?
I've been trying to get her all afternoon. I wanted to tell her that that was no accident, how her husband got killed.
What's that?
He was murdered on account of something I told him.
Who is this?
I'm not saying. Not now, anyway.
You're the client who was with Glen last night?
Yeah, that's right. We wrote up a paper.
He told me about it. Listen to me. You've got the information I've been looking for. I've got to see you.
You go see Warren Kelly. He's the one that had him killed.
Warren Kelly? Who is he? Why would he have Glen killed?
Are you a lawyer, too?
No, I'm a private detective. Glen was one of my closest friends. I've tried to tell the police that it was probably murder, but I can't get any place with him because I haven't had anything definite. If you've got some information, won't you give it to me?
You're willing to pick it up after what happened to him?
Where can I meet you?
All right. If you're game, I am. I sure got nothing to lose. You'll have to come here. I'm being watched.
Where are you?
You know Caruso's Cafe on Front Street?
I'll find it.
Ask the bartender for Bruno. But you're sticking your neck out. You're liable to end up where your pal is.
Just don't change your mind, Bruno. I'll get there as fast as I can.
We'll return to yours truly, Johnny Dollar, in just a moment. Learn how American communities have solved major problems on a local level. Hear true stories of democracy at work on The People Act, a new CBS radio series having its premiere performance tomorrow night on most of these same CBS radio stations. Now with our star, Edmund O'Brien, we bring you the second act of Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Good evening, sir. What do you have?
I came to see Bruno. Said you could tell me how to find him.
What's your name?
Dollar.
Listen, you buy one drink and look like a customer.
Okay. Bourbon and soda, then.
Right away. This all right?
Yeah, that's good.
What's the matter with him, anyway? He gonna get killed?
I don't know much about it yet.
Well, he's my friend since we was kids, so I help him. But I don't like it. I don't like trouble. There. You drink that, then you go back where you see the restroom signs.
Yeah.
Then you see one more door. And through that, you find the stairs. He's up there in the storeroom. The office is at the end.
Okay, thanks. What do I owe you?
60.
Okay, keep it, and thanks again.
Who's that? Dollar?
Yeah.
All right, I'll turn the light on. All right, come on in the office.
Is it Mr. Bruno?
Here, it's Bruno, Vic. I'm sorry I got your pal killed.
So am I. But he didn't have to take you as a client, I guess. What's it all about?
How much did he tell you?
Nothing except that he had a statement.
He was going to meet me tonight with a notary, and then he said it would hold some water.
What made it worth killing Glen over? What was in it?
The names of the 3 men that killed him. They got the paper, I guess.
They got it. Who are these 3 men? This Kelly you mentioned. That seems to ring a bell.
Yeah, he's one of them, Warren Kelly. The other 2 are Nat Reiner and Alex Shaw. This is what happened. I didn't mean for it to ever go this way. I told you, pal, he was as hot as I was as long as he had that paper. He shouldn't have been out on the street.
That part of it's past. What happened?
Well, not many people know it, but Kelly is one of the big bosses of the syndicate around here. His front is a contracting firm. He got where he is because he got rid of the guy who was standing in his way. Maybe you remember Ed Waters.
Yeah, vaguely. That was quite a while back.
Yeah, 2 years. Kelly wasn't even questioned because nobody knew what happened to Waters. But I do. I was with Kelly when he killed him. I helped bury his body. I know where it is. And Kelly's had men hunting me for a year.
This is what you put in that statement?
Yeah, that's right.
Glen was killed over a 2-year-old gang murder?
I told him to be careful. I told him how I'd been hunted from here to California to the Mexican border, every place. I haven't had a day's rest since Kelly got so big he decided it wasn't safe to have me around. I told him all that.
Maybe you forgot to tell him that you let Kelly know you were going to make a statement to a lawyer.
No, I didn't do that. But I let him know that I was through running. That I was going to give myself up. The paper was addressed to the DA.
Why'd you bother with a lawyer? Why didn't you go direct to the DA? You're hard to believe, Vic.
Look, Dollar, I know how you feel losing a friend, but I went to him for advice on the best way to do it. It was his idea. He wanted to go to court with me. Mostly, I think he figured what a splash he'd make by breaking open that old case.
How did they know enough to kill him?
I don't know. If they followed me to his office, I didn't see him. And I had a lot of practice being followed. But I can get him for you.
No, you don't. We'll do it the simple way. You come on down to police headquarters with me.
Now, you don't want to walk out of this cafe with me? Now, let me douse the light and you come over the window with me. Come on. Take a look. They're right across the street. They're standing together near the bakery.
Yeah.
One on the left's Nat Reiner, the other's Alex Shaw. They're waiting for me. You're going to have a tough time proving anything about your pal.
Taking you in will put the police on it anyway.
Look at those creeps waiting for me. It's been like this for a year. Every place. 2 or 3 creeps waiting for me. But no more. I'm through running.
I guess you asked for it.
Yeah, I guess so. But I could count one good thing if I could lay those 2 and Kelly away.
Where's the telephone?
It's at the bottom of the stairs into the back.
Stay here. I'm going to call the police. See if they won't come down here.
Sure.
I realized that I still faced the same situation. I was phoning in about a material witness and 2 suspects in the death that the police had filed as accidental. Lieutenant Tozer was off duty and the desk sergeant wouldn't give me his home number. I gave up in something less than 5 minutes, but during that time, Bruno Vic had come down the stairs and passed without my seeing him. The first inkling I had of what he was doing was a shout from the bartender.
Bruno, where you go? Vic, come back!
fool!
Ryder, sure you're waiting for me.
What happened? What's going on? Vic. Is that Bruno? Bruno. Is he dead?
Yeah, he's dead.
Who's that one in the street?
Which one are you? You're Reiner, aren't you?
Leave me alone. Leave me alone. Can't move legs.
Don't try it. The ambulance will be here in a little while.
Well, Dollar, they tell me you finally made a murder case of it.
I finally have something like evidence that's what it was from the beginning. This one is Bruno Vic. He's the one who made the statement Glen English was killed for. The other one over here is still alive. He's Matt Reiner.
Well, how are you feeling?
Leave me alone.
Tell the lieutenant about that hit and run last night, Reiner.
Get away from me.
Well, any more?
No, Reiner was here by himself waiting for Vic to come out. He fired first before Vic saw him, and Vic just managed to get a shot off before he died.
That's a lie.
If you want to take the rap alone, Reiner, I'll lie all the way up to the Supreme Court to help you do it.
Well, we'll have a little talk later on. Tell me how this happened, Dollar.
Well, Vic was holed up on the second floor of the cafe. I was in the phone booth downstairs when he started out. From what he said to me, I think he came out knowing he was going to be killed.
I don't quite understand.
I'm not sure of this, but it seems to me that he realized how hard it would be to prove anything in Glen's death, so he sort of offered his own as something to nail them with.
Lieutenant Dozier.
Sergeant Wilson?
Over here, sir.
Oh, yeah. Well, I seem to have something.
This one, sir, Bruno Vic. He was carrying a letter addressed to the district attorney.
As testimony in a court of formal law, I don't think Vic's unwitnessed letter would have been worth anything. But under the circumstances of the case, it was pretty strong police evidence. It obviously was as close as possible a duplicate of the statement given Glen English, in content at least. But it opened... In a way, you could call this a dying statement, because I'm not going to run anymore, and they're waiting for me. He went on to describe the 2-year-old killing of Ed Waters and concluded with his theory as to how Glen English was killed. It was detailed enough to keep Lieutenant Dozier on the case until 3 a.m., when Nat Reiner regained consciousness after a spinal operation.
Well, Reiner, do you know that you would have died if it hadn't been for the work of the police surgeon?
That's one thing they forgot to tell me.
Did they tell you what you said under the anesthetic?
I didn't say anything.
Truth serum or a lie detector is going to bring out the same things.
Like what?
Like where Alex Shore is staying, 718 Harstock.
I didn't say that.
You don't remember what you said about Warren Kelly?
I didn't say anything.
You talked about last night, about catching up with that lawyer, Glen English.
No.
You named the street corner.
No. I know you're bluffing.
How did you know it was Highgrove and Clayton? That's what you said.
I read it in the paper.
Why should you read about that?
It was on the front page.
Why, semi-conscious, should you remember the intersection?
I don't know. I don't believe you.
Believe what?
That I said we were there.
You and Alex Shore.
We weren't there.
Where were you? We've got more than you think, Reiner.
You've got nothing on me.
We've even got the truth about Ed Waters. We know where his body is buried. You want to get mixed up in that one, too?
What do you want?
Well, first you understand that these aren't police methods. Nothing you're saying can be taken in evidence against you. But you killed a friend of mine. And if I can make the lieutenant go out of the room, we'll get this settled in a hurry.
What do you want?
First, I want to hear about that hit and run last night.
I didn't have any part in it.
You were there.
All right. I was there. I'm the one who followed Vic to that lawyer's office.
His name was English.
I followed him home, and we waited for him. When he came out, we followed him in the car, and at the corner, we pulled in front of him when he stepped off the curbing. Then Shaw got out.
Kelly wasn't there?
No, he wasn't there.
But he ordered it done?
Yeah. He said we had to do it.
What did he say you had to do?
We made it look like a hit and run. He had Vic's paper in his pocket. Shaw took that, and then we made it look like a hit and run. Shaw slugged them first, and then we used the car.
Enough, Lieutenant?
Yeah, I think so. He'd better get some rest.
Pretty late.
I have 2 squad cars standing by to go after Alex Shaw.
I didn't mean it was too late, that, Lieutenant. Do you think he'll be there?
He's there. I got a report he arrived not 20 minutes ago.
718 Harstock, as the department knows, is a building that should be burned out of Hartford. It's been a sore spot, a root of trouble for long enough. It holds 12 families, and Alex Shaw's apartment was on the top floor in the rear. Lieutenant Dolger's men were given positions that covered all the exits, and he and I went up.
Yeah? Who is it? Police, Shaw. Let us in.
What do you want?
You were identified as being in that shooting scrape in front of the Caruso Cafe. Come on, let us in. Shaw, I do have a warrant.
He's trying something.
Let's go in.
Okay. Try the panel.
I can reach the knob now.
The window there.
Nelson! Nelson! Yes, Lieutenant. We're in his rooms and he's not here. Head, there he is, Nelson. On the roof across the way.
They'd better stop him. He's a killer, Lieutenant.
Nelson! Tell him to open up! Open up!
I won't bother with any final entry or any expense account total, since this statement will only be read by the police. But I will include remarks. They tell me that almost every day murders are being passed off as natural or accidental deaths, only because people don't look at the circumstances closely enough. I'm proving nothing. If I'd been a better friend, I'd have walked halfway and met Glen English before he was killed. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, stars Edmund O'Brien in the title role and is written by Gil Dowd with music by Wilbur Hatch. Edmund O'Brien can now be seen starring in the Paramount Pictures Technicolor production Silver City. Featured in tonight's cast were Jeanette Nolan, Jim Nusser, Gene Bates, Wally Mayer, Jay Novello, Edgar Barrier, and Bill Conrad. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, is transcribed in Hollywood by Jaime Del Valle.
This is Dan Cubberly inviting you to join us next week at this time when Edmund O'Brien returns as...
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Welcome back. It seems that friends of Johnny Dollar have a lot of bad luck, particularly in these O'Brien episodes. Though I should say that a lot of detectives have a very high number of friends who get themselves killed. And even non-detectives like MacGyver. Shows you just hear, oh, he was my friend, and you know, well, that's the person who's gonna die. But anyway, a good episode, and I think Edmund O'Brien really brought the right intensity there. And good to hear Wally Mayer as well. Next week will actually be our last time with Edmund O'Brien as Johnny Dollar. So John Lund will be taking over in 2 weeks. I want to turn now to listener comments and feedback. First of all, I'd like to thank Chuck, who sent in a donation to the program. Oh, wait, it's just simply Charles here. Charles, who sent in a donation to the program. It's much appreciated, and as our thank you gift, we will send along access to our premium site, which we send out with all donations of $7 or more. Now I turn to a comment I should have gotten to last week. I overlooked that. It was regarding the Youngstown Credit Group matter. Always fun to hear the yours truly Johnny Dollars that took place on what are now relatively small cities like Youngstown. If the scripts were being written today, they'd probably all be set in San Diego or Phoenix and Los Angeles, or somewhere outside of the Rust Belt. Well, Tom, that's a good observation. Johnny Dollar was unusual in that the scripts were set all across America and around the world. The major cities where these adventures occurred, the top ones were New York, Hartford, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Boston, Philadelphia, and then Sarasota, Florida, Davis Dam, Arizona, Las Vegas, and Chicago, but pretty much spread throughout the country. There were very few states where Johnny Dollar did not end up operating. He didn't go to Idaho, which was kind of a bummer, or Utah, North Dakota, South Dakota, or Kansas, and never found a reason to go to Minnesota. And there were a few other places. But really, you listen to this long enough, and odds are you're going to hear some area that is familiar to you. And that was a great way to ensure you didn't run out of plot ideas. But thanks so much for the email. Now we have a comment from, or a review, I should say, on iTunes from Inspector Doyle. I've always loved old-time radio, especially detective shows. Glad I found you, Adam. Joan says, I really enjoy all the shows on this podcast, Adam. You're doing a great job. Keep up your good work, my friend, from Joan in Canada, and love great detectives. Well, that'll actually, thanks so much, that'll do it for now. We will be back on Monday with Barrie Craig, Confidential Investigator, and then next Friday, listen in for Edmund O'Brien's last appearance that's in circulation we have of yours truly, Johnny Dollar. In the meanwhile, send your comments to box13 at greatdetectives.net. Give us a call, 208-991-4783. And follow us on Twitter at Radio Detectives. But from Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham, signing off.